the planning board meeting of March 6, 2019. We have a very full agenda, quite a few bits, matters. Dave Arnson is going to be representing the planning board in connection with the Duryea application, because there are conflicts between members of the town attorney staff. So Mr. Arnson will be sitting in John's seat because the Duryea matter is a substantial one, and also we'd like to be able to get Mr. Arnson here and on his way. We're going to do that. We're going to take that out of order. So we'll get started with that. Is Eric here? That's not Eric. I'm sorry. It's Joanne. My Eric. Okay. Here, that's fine. That's fine. I'm sorry, I just explained that David's going to be sitting in, and there's a conflict with the members of the town attorney's office.
Should you go get a sandwich?
We'll wait. Okay, very good, yeah. Joanne, whenever you're ready, we're ready.
Okay, we received an application for the Duryea site in Montauk. It's a 2.67 acre lot with frontage on both Tut Hill Pond and Fort Pond. Contains tidal and freshwater wetlands, and is zoned both waterfront and B residence, located in a harbor protection overlay district, water protection overlay district, the Peconic Bay critical environmental area, and a scenic area of statewide significance. Tut Hill Road, which runs through the center of the property, is a private road that's part of the lot. Others have easements to trespass or traverse over it. The site was the subject of a recent stipulation of settlement involving a facility that had approval as a wholesale retail seafood shop with accessory food service counters and an accessory patio deck for outdoor consumption of food sold at the fish market that had been operating as a restaurant. The stipulation requires that the applicant obtain site plan special permit approval for the restaurant use, the proposed innovative alternative sanitary system, and for any parking that's not pre-existing non-conforming. The stipulation also allows the applicant to continue to provide waitstaff service to the tables for those customers requesting assistance or any other condition, while site plan approval is being obtained for the continuation of the non-conforming uses on the residential portion of the property in conformance with Exhibit A and the placement of the IA system for the commercial use with the area zone, within the area zone B residence. The stipulation further requires an expedited review by the planning board. So we have jumped this ahead of other applications that we had in the pipeline. A site plan application has been submitted for a change of use for the restaurant and for the innovative alternative septic system. The applicant contends in the application that parking for 80 vehicles is pre-existing non-conforming and that there will be no increase in parking. In looking at lot area, the lot is split by two zoning districts. Essentially, on the east side, up the hill, where the residence is, that is zone B residence, and the rest of the lot is zone waterfront. It's one parcel, but it's split by two zones, and that's we have that in a number of cases throughout the town. They gave us lot coverage was given on the site plan based on the entire lot being, the lot area of the entire lot being zone waterfront, where a maximum of 75% total coverage is allowed. However, it's been the town's practice to calculate coverage on the residential, where you have two zoning districts, you calculate coverage individually for the two sections. So what we need is the zoning line shown on the site plan, and we need the lot area of the residentially zoned parcel separate from the waterfront, and to know what the coverage of that is. The coverage for waterfront is, maximum coverage is 75%. It would be much less than that for a residentially zoned lot. A restaurant in a waterfront zoning district is classified as a special permit use. The special permit standards for the restaurant, specific to a restaurant, are two. First, in determining whether to issue a special permit for the use, the ultimate customer capacity of the restaurant shall be calculated in order to determine potential sewage waste, kitchen waste, and parking needs, and shall include any potential expansion of outdoor eating patios or decks. And secondly, a plan demonstrating how the disposal of sewage and kitchen waste will be handled shall be provided. Particular attention shall be given where the proposed site is near wetlands or surface waters. And I note that we do have some information regarding this. We do have a sanitary plan, not with all, but we do need additional information. The ultimate customer capacity is calculated by reviewing a floor plan and a seating plan. And the alternative capacity is determined based on the rated capacity of the floor plan. So in order to look for compliance with the special permit standards, floor plans and seating plans should be submitted to the file. The project also needs to comply with the general site plan standards and general special permit standards, which should be attached to the memorandum. And looking at parking, the application includes a statement that all of the parking depicted on the site plan is pre-existing non-conforming and that no new parking is proposed. The application indicates that there are 84 pre-existing non-conforming parking spaces consisting of 70 regular spaces, 3 handicap accessible spaces, and 11 boat spaces that are serving as parking spaces. It's stated in the stipulation that respondents acknowledge that the survey and plan attached as Exhibit E represents all structures, uses, and use areas currently existing, maintained, and used on the Duryea property. This is Exhibit E. So on Exhibit E, there are 7 parking places delineated here, and then there are 2 areas of undelineated parking, stone parking areas. That is quite different than what is on the parking that they're showing on the site plan is pre-existing, includes all of the spaces in these small green lines up and down both sides of the Tut Hill Road. There's some on the residential parcel and the boat slips, and then some inside the 2 garages. It's noted that several site plan applications for the property have been submitted in the past seeking approval for the relocation of some of the existing parking and for the additional parking that's shown on the site plan now that were never completed or approved. The site plan, the applicant should provide a narrative regarding the use of the garages and 11 boat slips for parking, including information as to whether these spaces will be dedicated exclusively for restaurant parking. And parking calculations that include all of the existing or proposed usage should be provided on the site plan. A number of the proposed parking spaces are located in close proximity to wetlands and do not meet the minimum 100-foot wetland setback requirement. The planning board does not have the authority to relax setbacks for wetlands. It does for yard setbacks, but not wetland setbacks. So the applicant, it appears, will need to obtain a wetland setback variance for the proposed spaces from the Zoning Board of Appeals before the planning board can deem the application complete. The wetlands were last flagged on the property in 2014, and the applicant will need to apply for an updated flagging and depict this line and date on the site plan. And we note that the application includes a copy of a plan approved by the New York State DEC that depicts a stone area that's not shown on the current site plan. This is I'm sorry, I had to copy this sideways because it was too big to go in the machine. So
That's not one of the exhibits, is it?
it's It's not an exhibit, it's
to the stipulation?
actually,
It's in the application?
this was part of the application. So this plan is showing, this is the residence, to orient you, the restaurant, Tut Hill Road, and this is the restaurant, this is the, where the new system is going, and it's showing a whole stone parking area to the south of the residence, which is not shown on the current site plan. So this is the DEC has required that that be stone parking. It doesn't meet the wetland setbacks, and it also is not currently shown on the site plan. So the applicant needs to, that would be this entire area here. You know, the site plan is only showing the two spaces on this area, so applicant needs to address this. The two plans should be consistent. The site plan shows that the existing sanitary system will be replaced with an IA system. 2 grease traps are proposed, new grease traps in front of the entrance to the restaurant. Then there's a pump station, and the cottage here and the restaurant and other uses will all connect to the pump station, and then the waste is pumped up and around the back of the residence to the actual treatment center, and then the leaching field is across the front of the residence. And we note that in order to level that hill, to put the system, there are 2 retaining walls proposed. One of them is approximately 5.5 feet tall, and then there's a setback, and there's a second one about 4 feet high. So essentially coming up the road up the hill, you're going to be looking at 2 almost, you're probably not going to be able to distinguish between the 2 walls. It's almost going to look like a 9-foot wall. So we need more an elevation detail of that, how the heights, materials, and the board is probably going to want some screening too, so that's not, because it's a scenic area of statewide significance, so you're not going to want to be seeing a wall there most likely. The site plan indicates that the lot area for the health department purposes is 3.6 acres, exclusive of wetlands and underwater lands. The difference between our lot area calculation and the health department's is that we exclude the private road from when we, as well as the wetlands, when we include lot area. The health department they exclude wetlands, but not the private roads. So their calculation of lot area is 3.6 acres, and this is in a groundwater management zone 4, allowing for a maximum density of 600 gallons per acre, or 2,160 gallons. The health department calculates the density flow for each of the residences at 300 gallons per day, and at restaurant seats at 10 gallons per day. The stipulation includes a drawing which appears to have the sanitary calculations which we would normally get for a site plan on it, but it's at such a small scale and such small pixels that when you blow it up, you can't read anything. So they should be submitting to us the Suffolk County Department of Health density calculations. But speaking to the health department, we were advised that they were reviewing the application as being and the sanitary system as being for 16 indoor seats, which is interesting because that's the maximum calculation for takeout food, and also for 90 outdoor seats. But the applicants should be submitting that information to the file, the sanitary calculations to the file, because the seating plan should reflect that, and the parking requirement should reflect the number of seats also. The lot's located in Velocities and AE and X part. The top of the hill is the X zone. The rest of it is in AE and velocity zones as designated by SFEMA. The lift station and the sanitary system itself are both located in the X zone and are not subject to flooding. And the grease traps are to be located in the AE zone, but it doesn't appear that there's a feasible place to locate them elsewhere on the property. And the parking is all proposed to be located in AE flood zones, but this would not appear to present a limited, or would only present a limited concern. Well, the majority of the parcel is located in a slosh zone and subject to wave action in a major storm. The proposed innovative alternative system is located outside of the slosh zone. And I didn't get one of these on the board, but you'll see in the memo, it's interesting because the slosh zone was wave action in a major hurricane, and it shows that the ocean would break through downtown Montauk, Fort Pond, and would come up and cover most of this parcel, except the area, the high area where the residence is and where the sanitary system is being proposed. The project site's located in or adjacent to an area designated as sensitive for archaeological sites on the New York State Historic Preservation Office Archaeological Site Inventory, and it's recommended that a Stage 1A and 1B archaeological study be conducted for areas to be disturbed on the residentially zoned portion of the lot. A lot of the areas down here are fill or beach, so, but this high area would have been near a freshwater pond. It's not far from Massacre Valley and Fort Pond, where we know there was an Indian fort in this general area. So, and this is a high point, so there is a possibility that there could actually be something on the site. So, we recommend that be that study be conducted and submitted to the file. This is an unlisted action pursuant to SECRA. This appears that the zoning board will be another involved agency. The board should consider whether they want to request lead agency status for the project. Project's incomplete. Oh, and I have a town engineer's memorandum.
Please, yes.
He indicates he's recommending that there be crushed gravel parking spaces south of the speed bump. The speed bump is approximately here. So he's recommending that these spaces be crushed gravel and that there be asphalt north of that line. He's also asking for grades, proposed grades depicted for all parking, and that the handicap spaces have detailed grading to show the accessible route from the parking space to the building. Also, the striping and the slopes depicted and signage. The boat slips are required to be ADA accessible, and he has attached some ADA guidelines for recreational boat facilities. In this particular case, it's required to have one handicap slip, and this slip can be used by a non-handicapped person, but it must be the last one occupied. In other words, if they're proposing 11, well, they can rent out the spaces, but the last one to be rented out has to be held for somebody who's handicap accessible. He's requesting rock wall construction details and information on the aesthetics, elevations of the wall, the location of where the existing wall stops and where the proposed wall starts, pavement details for asphalt and gravel, and leaching chambers south of the speed bump. He has a specific recommendation for that, so he's asking for some drainage information. He also deems the application incomplete.
Incomplete. Very good. Okay, thanks very much. We'll hear from the applicant next.
I don't know if anybody's here for them. I don't think anybody's here for them.
No
Oh,
one's-
I guess she's coming up.
Is anyone here for the applicant? Very well.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I represent the applicant. My name is Gabrielle Maas, and I'm an attorney with the offices of Michael G. Walsh. We received the planning staff's initial report yesterday afternoon. We filed a letter with your board confirming our understanding that when the initial report is finalized, you guys will give us a copy, and we will follow up with a written response prior to your March 27th work session. And we also request to have an opportunity to respond to the initial report at the March 27th work session.
Yeah, we're not specifying March 27th date. I know it's in your letter. You'll have to work directly with the planning department on the specific schedule. You're not committing to any particular date.
Okay.
All right, this letter is not a request for an adjournment on your part, is it?
No.
Okay, very well.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, in that case, we'll move on to Lou. It's a Montauk application, so it's your baby.
Okay. Yeah, I have a number of questions regarding this application, but before I get to those questions, I have a question.
I'm sorry?
Yes, I have a question for you.
Yeah, no, we're
Don't leave.
nowhere near done yet.
Yeah, I've got a question. I know I asked this question earlier today with one of my colleagues on the board and one of the planning department people, but I just want to get the legal opinion. It's on page 7 of the stipulation, and it's paragraph number 7, site plan review. It states in that paragraph, let's see. Restaurant on site which the parties agree is in as of right, and that's in quote, that term, as of right use in a waterfront zone. Now, I always thought, and I'm not a lawyer, but I always thought that that term, as of right, meant that that restaurant has been deemed to exist as a restaurant legally already. And as I understand this application, that's not the case, that what has existed there has been a takeout type of establishment. So can you clarify what is meant in the stipulation there? Is that a contradictory?
Well, in a general sense, let me just state for everybody's benefit, my office was retained literally 5 hours ago to come in here and act in this capacity, so I have not seen this stipulation before nor had an opportunity to evaluate it yet. Based upon the fact that the application we believed was going to be deemed incomplete, we're still awaiting review of the whole file. But as of right can have different connotations in a general sense, depending on special permit uses, things of that nature. So it doesn't necessarily mean specifically as of right, as is. That's the way it can be.
Okay.
That's as far as I can offer today.
Let me also add that as of right sometimes is meant to say that it's within legal setbacks, that it meets certain minimum requirements. The significance of this stipulation, which is so ordered by a court, by Judge Riley on January 25th of this year, is that this application will go forward before the planning board pursuant to this order. Now, in terms of legal interpretations of this order and what it means is something that we'll take up with counsel, and to the extent that this body has questions about the interpretation of this, those are probably better left for executive session or sessions that are subject to attorney-client privilege. That said, we have an order. It's signed by the judge. We're going to go forward with this application. The purpose, and again, I don't want to be one interpreting this decision, but it seems quite clear that the purpose of this stipulation is to permit this board to go forward with this application. So now that this order is in place, this board will hear this application, and this application is incomplete, and this is, where we are now is at the beginning of a long road, and we're not anywhere near the place where we can say, okay, this is the way it's going to be. This is our very first hearing subsequent to this order coming down from the court, and we're going to go forward with it. So.
Okay. By the way, I wasn't I wasn't taking any issue with what you said.
No, I know, I didn't say you were. I just wanted to be
I just wanted
clear.
to be clear about that term because I think it's central to what we're asked to do here.
Yeah, Lou, can I just make a comment? I noticed the planning department memo characterizes this as a change of use from areas for outdoor consumption of food sold at the fish market to restaurant.
Right. So we're considering that change of use. That's why I asked if the stipulation says it's already deemed to be a restaurant. That was the conflict that I was questioning.
I think not, because the stipulation also says they need to apply for a site plan special permit for the restaurant use, so I
Okay,
think that there is,
all right. Just wanted to clear that up.
yeah,
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, and, you know, I think it is, you mentioned it, Joanne, but I think it's important that we get a large, readable copy of Exhibit E, because I think Exhibit E is very central also to what we're asked to do as the planning board. Because, you know, I noticed that I was able to decipher on the copy that we have that it seems that there were 24 spaces, or there were 7 spaces that were clearly marked. And I think you said in your memo there are 2 other areas that could probably fit 17 spaces.
yeah.
So my point there is, if there's an Exhibit E that's part of this stipulation that depicts 24 spaces, and they're saying that the 84 spaces that they've delineated on their site plan are pre-existing non-conforming, to me that seems to be a contradictory set of facts. So I wanted to bring that out. There's also the issue of, and I know, Joanne, we talked about it earlier, that the 3 lots are considered to be 1 lot. However, even in that sense, one of the lots, the one that contains the house, is considered to be residential for zoning purposes. Mm-hmm. So even though it's 1 lot, it's really 3 lots, one of which is residential, the other 2 are commercial.
Well, there's separate tax maps, numbers, tax map lots, but the town considers it to be 1 lot, and that lot is split by 2 different it's split by zoning, 2 different zoning districts covering the lot.
But the code that applies to that section where the house is, that area, would be as though it was a residential.
Yes, yes.
So any commercial use on that lot would be prohibited.
Yes, that's true, but except the stipulation allows for the continuation of any pre-existing parking, which we haven't found that there to be any. The applicant's going to have to try to make that case, and it allows for the location of the sanitary system, which is for the commercial facility. So it allows for that specifically allows for the commercial use of the property to locate the sanitary system. And also it would allow the continuation of any pre-existing parking, but any new parking on it would appear to me to be prohibited. It would be prohibited to put any additional commercial related uses on that property.
So let me be clear on that. So you're saying that because basically you're saying what it says in the stipulation overrules all other zoning codes or regulations.
I would say, yeah,
It's a court order.
yeah.
It's a court order. So if the zoning code says you can't put commercial use on a residential property, the court order, the stipulation says you can, that's what rules.
But it specifies limited commercial
But only if
uses
it's
that can be there, yeah.
pre-existing non-conforming. In
Well,
other words,
no.
Well, no, the septic system,
No, but I
Septic
mean,
is new.
the parking.
the parking,
We
right?
can't, they can't add new parking on residential property for the restaurant. That's not,
They can't add new parking.
no,
But putting the waste treatment system on,
that's in the court order.
right,
yeah.
but that's new.
That's new.
Yeah, that's definitely new.
But that's the only commercial use of the residential property that was stipulated, isn't that right?
Yeah.
Besides the parking.
Yeah, well, what parking exists there, which I think is only 2 spaces. It's not.
I'm not
And
sure.
it's not even
that they-
clear because it's in a garage, right? I mean,
The Exhibit E does not show any
Right.
commercial
So there may be no
parking on
there
that
at all.
property.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, normally, for us to establish pre-existing non-conforming use, there'd be a number of ways the applicant could do that, like aerial photography, or a CO, or photographs, or whatever. So if we get into that,
Well, that's what Exhibit E, I mean,
But this, maybe the our attorneys need to look at that because the
Yes.
stipulation specifically says that it recognizes any uses on Exhibit E. And that part, there's no parking shown on Exhibit E, so,
the only formal spaces are those 7,
yeah.
And then there are
The residential
areas-
portion of the lot does
Right.
not depict any
right?
any
Parking at all.
any parking on that. So we're referred to, all structures and uses on Exhibit E are recognized as being pre-existing non-conforming. So I would say that we would not be able to recognize any parking as being, on that property as being
residential lot.
pre-existing.
Portion of the, yeah.
so 0.
But that our attorneys have to.
Yeah, these
Yeah.
are all,
Too.
these are all
Complicated
questions that are going to, look, you're talking about a stipulation so ordered, which contains a rather lengthy, over a page long, paragraph entitled, paragraph 7, site plan review, which relates to specifically, quote, "end any increase in parking," close quote, and that phrase repeats itself a few times. I think it's, it is not something that we should be concerning ourselves with right here and right now.
I don't see how we can avoid it, Sam. It's so basic to our review.
Then we have a legal, you're talking about interpreting this order.
Right,
right?
but can we raise the areas that we find unclear, I think?
Look,
We
I think it's fine, I think it's fine for us to discuss, but I'm talking about in terms of like us trying to make interpret this document as a legal matter.
But for us to discuss the things that we have problems understanding, what it means, and I find this vague and contradictory and confusing.
Then what we need
You
to
know?
do is then what we need to do is we need to raise the issues that require further analysis, particularly as it relates to this order. That's fine. What I just don't want us doing is coming to legal conclusions, sitting here without the benefit of having an opportunity to speak to our attorneys
That sound about right?
as in,
Issues is absolutely fine.
yeah,
I read this an hour ago,
Right.
so.
in executive session, with the attorney, so that we understand the limits of what we can do within the context of this order. And I don't want to, but raise all the issues,
I'll
discuss
raise
them
them
all.
when it's my turn.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay, I also want to make a point about the IA system that they're proposing. They note that it has a capacity of 3,800 gallons per day. Even though this area is in the groundwater management zone 4, which allows a maximum of 2,160 gallons per day for this property, as you've noted in your memo. Right, Joanne?
I should probably further just clarify that point, because I believe when going back and looking at it, they need to design the system, the health department requires them to design the system to have a 50% expansion area. So I think that the fact that it's designed to that higher number represents the 50% expansion area that the health department requires. So
Why do they require that?
they want to allow for future expansion whenever on any
Well, that's a
commercial
problem,
property.
because what if we don't, what if we feel that this particular use, the restaurant, if we set a maximum number of seats that we feel comfortable in this area, how can we also expect it to increase in use?
Yeah, if you tie your site plan approval to that number of seats and you look at the number of parking spaces, then they should have to come back to the planning board for additional seats.
Okay, is there any permit that you've seen that they've gotten in the past that indicate, or any even Suffolk County Health Department permits that have been issued that indicate the maximum number of seats that have been allowed in the past?
I'd have to go back and through our records and look. There may be something. I'll take a look. I'm not sure at this time.
Because if it's, you mentioned in your memo also that they've orally, the health department, Suffolk County Health Department has orally approved 106 seats.
Does that mean?
For the restaurant,
I've
I-
never
I
seen
s-
an
they have-
oral health department approval.
or an
that-
oral indication, sorry, I
never
might
s-
have used it.
I've never seen an oral indication carry any weight with anybody.
All right. Well,
So-
I'm not saying it has any weight.
Right.
I'm not
Yeah.
proposing that it does. I'm just trying to figure out if I'm trying to see what number of seats they're aiming for. I mean, eventually, we should get that number stipulated and defined very clearly so we can base our decision on that.
We're going to see a seating plan, we're going to get a rating, we're going to get a seating plan or a occupancy. We're going to get,
Asking for it.
I don't know that, it's not clear to me from the stipulation that we are gonna get that. Stipulation, well, I'll wait my turn, but it seemed, maybe I'll wait my turn.
That's all I have for now. I just, I think it's important. I mean, there's a lot of questions. There's also the question of the variances. I think the big concern that I have is I know they tried to submit a plan for a very large restaurant in the past. And I'm just worried that, make sure that we do this right, that this isn't a backdoor way of them getting what was basically denied. They knew it was going to be denied. And them using this method of trying to get what was not feasible in the past. So that's my comment for now.
Yeah, so I think Joanne has done a great job of identifying the deficiencies in the application. I think it's very clear what we need to see. Some really basic stuff, floor plan, seating plans. We need to understand the parking situation better. We need to understand what the elevation of the retaining wall would look like. You chronicled everything we need to know, and I think, I don't want to get out in front of ourselves in the process here. I think when we have, at whatever meeting this gets scheduled for, next, when we see what this application is really all about, we'll be able to have a lot more to say. And I'm hoping that our counsel, in the meantime, can help us understand a little bit better. I don't think tonight is the time to do it, exactly what the stipulation means in terms of our ability to come to some conclusions about it relative to that. So for now, that's all I have.
That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't involved with the litigation or the discussions that led to the stipulation. So there are certainly weird things, like putting a wastewater treatment, system on a residential property, to me seems odd, but, I don't want to prejudge that. I think that what our counsel is advising us is that the stipulation supersedes anything that our code says, in the point that it touches on those things. It does seem to say that the building department is going to issue a CO with a list of things that will be approved, and that the only aspects that are triggering site plan are the placement of the wastewater treatment and the additional parking. So I think there's a question that I can't answer, but we should answer. Does that mean that we look at a floor plan? I think that this is saying that they're going to get a CO for buildings that exist. Does that CO list seating? The way that it's worded, it's not clear what that CO would say. But I think the stipulation is saying that they're gonna get a CO, we're gonna look at a site plan, and the only reason we have to look at that site plan are for the placement of the wastewater treatment and additional parking. That feels odd to me as a planning board member, because that's not how we do things.
But again, my understanding is though, there needs, and it says right in Joanne's notes, that they need to obtain a site plan special permit for the restaurant,
Right.
right? So that obviously means we're gonna get floor plans, seating plans, all of that,
So
right?
I think the difference was that the site plan for the restaurant is for the use. So we are looking at the use of a restaurant, and as
Right.
part of looking at the use for the restaurant, the special permit standards really direct us to get the seating plan and the floor plan, so.
Well,
How can you do
Doesn't that
parking
determine- yeah, I was gonna
without
say.
seating?
That's
Yeah.
what I just.
no, I don't disagree.
And how can you do wastewater without seating?
Right. And I don't know the answer to that. I'm only voicing it now so that we can move this along as efficiently as possible and be as thorough as possible. So I want to voice it so that our council can hear my question and advise us for the next meeting. So yeah, I don't know. It's an odd situation to have a stipulation that differs from our code, and it's unique to us. So I want to be fair. I want to honor what the stipulation and the court has said we have to do. But I also want to, in the interest of good planning, be as thorough and good about it as possible. So not much more to say here, but I'll leave it at that.
Very well, Kathy.
I want to applaud Joanne's thoroughness too. This is a great memo. It was really helpful. The stipulation is problematic for me too. I'm glad we're going to have a chance to sit down with the attorney. Site plan assessment via stipulation is not my favorite mechanism. But I do have some questions. We really need to see that Exhibit E. That's just, it's impossible to do the before and after comparison of, most of this without that in a readable form. So I look forward to a page like that I can look at. I don't have too much else to add to what my colleagues have said. I am alarmed about the DEC application and the parking area that's depicted on the DEC application and on the residential lot that's absent the site plan, because that doesn't instill trust. And I am concerned about, this is a beautiful area, it's very hilly, and those two walls are going to be, that's going to be a big structure to look at as you're coming up that hill. So I want a landscaping plan or some other way to soften that, because that's just, 9 feet that's just unacceptable. That's just too tall. I mean, we don't even like to have fences over 6 feet, in a yard, no less a retaining wall. And I understand that they need it for the IA system. I also would like to see an IA maintenance system, whatever they're going to do, because this is the craziest routing uphill of a sewage system that I've ever encountered. And it's long and circuitous, and I'm concerned that it's not going to function that well. We're desperate to have the nitrogen removed from this effluent, and without a proper plan. I mean, I trust that they will come up with something that's supposed to work, but I would like to know that there's a maintenance plan, because in, rainy periods and so forth, the whole chemistry of the ground changes, and the mechanics of pushing water uphill is going to be a much bigger challenge than I think. Certainly, I'm not capable of analyzing that, but I would like to hear from someone who can. So let's see. I have so many notes here. And I do think the parking has to be, we have to have a seating plan. We just have to have a seating plan. The parking has to be tied to the seating. There's just no question about that. This is, shoot first, ask questions later kind of planning, which doesn't enable us to do the right thing for the community or for the applicant, for that matter. I think that's enough for now. It's still incomplete. We've got a lot to get, a lot more information to get.
Randy?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so a couple of the questions about the stipulation. It allows wait staff, that the language that it uses about the applicant, or I guess he's the petitioner, that he can basically start operating. This is what's it's unclear to me. That
Yeah, I
he
have
can,
that here. I forgot that.
there's a few things that he's allowed to do as far as it's not clear to me whether he can operate what he used to have during the review process. In other words, the
Yeah, food service.
food service out, was on the deck.
Yeah, I have it highlighted.
So,
But that doesn't go to the question of the site plan review and what we're here to do, does it?
I see your point. I think what, maybe I'll focus then on the wastewater treatment system.
Yeah, that, you see,
That has an 18-month after we approve, an 18-month period
Timeline, yeah.
that he can operate an approved restaurant before, and it says that he'll basically make an effort to get it approved. So I think the language here leaves it open that the restaurant could begin operation, he could try to do the reduced nitrogen system and fail for one reason or another, and he would have met the
but
requirements of the stipulation.
but the stipulation says, with respect to that, on or before 18 months from the date and condition upon site plan approval for a restaurant pursuant to paragraph 7 hereof, the petitioner shall install, et cetera, et cetera. So that brings us back to the paragraph with which we have to be concerned, which is paragraph 7, which begins, the parties understand and agree that the only site plan elements that trigger site plan review for the subject site per section 255-630B are the approval of the wastewater disposal system by the Suffolk County Department of Health Services, which wastewater disposal system has been conditionally approved for the subject site under reference number such and such, subject to receipt of the town's secra determination and the issuance of a certificate of occupancy and any increase in parking. And then it continues. So the idea is, if what you're talking about comes in there, that's and that's fine, and we can talk about that wastewater and how it fit, the water disposal system, and what we will require of that.
I guess the question maybe for council is, what happens if after 18 months the wastewater system is not completed or functioning?
I think, again, it will depend upon what the ultimate interpretation as to the scope of the review that's given to paragraph 7 and what's before you to decide pursuant to this order to make a substantive determination on the answer to that question. And that's something we can't do now with the application incomplete without additional information.
Okay, and then that goes to the question about being able to operate the restaurant.
The actual language says the applicant, the stipulation allows the applicant to continue to provide wait staff service to the tables for those this is quoted, for those customers requesting assistance or any other condition.
Or any other condition.
And so
What does
it
that
could be for ADA, people who need ADA assistance. That,
Paragraph of the stipulation, 'cause I'm looking at the wait staff service here, and I don't,
Paragraph 15, page 9. But the point is that's something, again, that's a question that is not for this board. I don't believe that it is. And if, to the extent that it may be, it's something that we should probably discuss with council. The limitations of this order is and the way in which this board is going to work within this order is something that we should talk about with council, so that we have an understanding of what it is we can and cannot do.
Yeah.
My initial, and I think I'm correct on this, is that my initial feeling is that this stipulation, this order, provides in the sentence that I just read, what it is we're supposed to do. Now, how that may impact, or how other paragraphs within this stipulation may impact that, again,
Yep.
that's something we should talk about with our attorney, because we shouldn't be taking positions here and now and possibly stating things and trying to do things that are contradicted or in contradiction of this order.
Right.
That's the last thing we want.
And somehow we balance that with having an open discussion about our
Yeah.
questions and concerns about the stipulation.
And that would be, and that's going forward, because as we all know, this is the first time. This stipulation was so ordered on January 25th.
I think-
And here we are now, a couple of weeks later.
You know, something that might help us would be a question like, could the planning board reduce the number of seats in the restaurant to a number that we find acceptable environmentally and et cetera. And because it goes to the design of the wastewater treatment, and it goes to the design of the parking.
Yeah.
And then we have this 18-month period where he's going to be allowed to operate. I'm not sure what is he allowed to operate during the 18-month period. And so that's part of the question. Is he going to operate I'll just leave that as the question. What is it that is allowed to take place during the review process?
I think he's allowed to run a restaurant. I mean, it says he can continue to provide wait staff.
It says petitioner may continue to use wait staff service at the Durier's property while processing the expedited site plan and special permit pursuant to paragraph 7 above, without the requirements of a special permit, site plan review for the customers requesting assistance or any other condition.
So
But what that means is what it means as a practical matter, and what it means, most importantly, to the work that we're going to do is something that we will require the assistance of counsel to understand.
okay. But that is a key factor if the court order intends to say he can continue doing whatever he was doing. Let's say he has a 120-seat restaurant. He can continue doing that while we're reviewing it.
Right.
And before he has this treatment system in place.
Is
Is that what it's saying?
Yeah.
Guys, that is something that we
Okay, so
should
there's
talk
a-
about
There's
with
the
counsel.
question.
All right, put that on your list of things.
I will. I would just point out one thing. That waitstaff paragraph 15 also refers back to paragraph 5. And paragraph 5 reads, to use areas, and the third sentence, to use areas currently existing, maintained, and used on the property. So on my first reading of this, it does seem to suggest what's happening now may be able to continue as opposed to something beyond that or something that changes. Again, that's just looking, every paragraph, or most of them, refer back to the site plan review process that paragraph 7 for your board defines what you can do. So we'll have to come to we'll have to, with my assistance.
Okay, good.
What that What
Alright,
seven
and-
is how that constrains you and how it does not constrain you will ultimately be the thing we'll have to address.
And
Because paragraph 5 also refers to Exhibit E, which is what
Right,
we're
Which
looking
we
at.
need to
Yeah.
get nice and clean.
Yeah,
and there's
That's
this,
easy.
this certificate of occupancy that has to be issued, which does not include a restaurant.
Please. The certificate of occupancy, again, the parameters of that, I believe, are set forth in paragraph 5. So,
All it
It-
says, but all the CO says is outdoor furnished deck area for the consumption of food and beverages. There's no CO for a inside restaurant. So that's the other question. Are we, we're not just allowing what they have had a CO for, which was service on the deck. If you can interpret this to say they're getting a use that they did not have a CO for and that the planning board has not yet approved.
But Randy, we're not allowing anything
we're
until
not-
we get an
yeah, thank you.
approval.
We're not allowing.
You know, we're not
okay?
gonna go
We're-
stop whatever
That's not us.
was happening. You know, we're not allowing anything until we approve something.
Right. Okay, so the stipulation is, right.
Yeah, okay.
Which is, you know,
And
beyond
that actually is an interpretation of the stipulation, which is, again, not for us to do here and now.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna go to Joanne's. I agree that Joanne did a really good job analyzing this and raising the issues, and I think we need to follow up on all of her suggestions. More information about the wastewater system and the wastewater flow based on the size of the property. The other thing I wanted to bring up that we haven't talked a lot about is Tut Hill Road. So Tut Hill Road is a private road, and the way they're showing the parking there with all those spaces along the road, and ostensibly people are going to walk from their car. I don't know what that distance is, Joanne, from the furthest parking space to the restaurant, but can you tell what that distance
Uphill.
is roughly?
Scale is, well, it's not the scale, so, I'm trying to find something that is.
Just judging by the spaces,
Yeah,
it's probably,
each parking space is 9 feet, so, 9 by 20, so what do you want to go from here to here?
Yeah. So it's probably.
I think if I look at a hard copy, I can tell you better.
it's probably about 150 to
200 feet. Probably walking in the private roadway in any type of weather. And what about the other traffic on that road that uses that road?
Well, and largely it's gonna come down to what parking is pre-existing, because
yeah.
I think that's what there's gonna be a debate about.
150.
But it's a very good point.
I would say it's close to 200 feet from the farthest parking space to the restaurant, approximately, maybe a little more.
Anything else?
Yeah, I think everybody has said everything else. There's a lot of information that we still need to really move forward with this and really think it out. But, you know, that my big concern is these pre-existing parking spaces, because if anybody drives that road on a rainy day, those parking spots are totally underwater. So, you know, these 80 spots become 40 on a rainy day. So just, you know, I think the engineer did mention something about drainage.
Yes.
And I do, you know, I think that's going to be a really important part of this application. I mean, I went through there yesterday, and it's just, it was underwater. So, other than that, I think we've all said everything that needs to be said, and there's a lot we need, so.
All right, and I don't need to repeat. We are governed by an order. We have, to the extent that that order requires legal interpretation, we're going to rely on counsel, and we will act within the terms of that order. I do know that the order mentions expedited treatment, and I want to let the applicant know that I don't know if that March 27th date is a good date or not. I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no, we'll let you know. But we recognize the requirements of the order, we recognize that, certain things have to happen.
Can I say one more thing?
Please.
I also meant to disclose when we started that I, in my independent business, I've sold vegetables to this restaurant in the past. Nothing major, nothing that will interfere with my ability to be fair, but I want to disclose it for the record, for the public.
Should I disclose that I've eaten there?
Well, whatever you want to disclose. And then I would ask, for the benefit of myself and maybe the board that, Joanne, I think you do such a great job with the planning elements, and that's what we all focus on as a planning board. But obviously, we're governed by new rules, a stipulation here. And when this comes before us next time, I would ask if it's possible for you to coordinate with our council as much as possible so that what's in the memo are the things we're supposed to look at. We want to look at everything we can, but the stipulation obviously stipulates what we can and can't look at. And to the extent that you two can, put a fine point on that so we know what we should be discussing next time, I think it'd be really helpful for me and probably the rest of the board.
Yeah, I think that's very a good thing to note. Site plan approval and parking give us plenty of there's plenty of meat on that bone. So yeah, we're gonna do. I was gonna run through the. And also, Joanne, let me add to everybody else's compliments on this fine and very comprehensive report. So I think what we'll do is go through the items that are in the report, and this will give the planning department the opportunity to know which direction we're going. This isn't a public hearing. We should be clear on that. This is a work session for the planning board. And I do know that there are members of the public who have strong opinions about this matter. I'm reluctant to deny any member of the public the opportunity to speak if they feel strongly about that. But we do have, for one thing, we have a very full agenda tonight. And another thing is, pardon me, this is the very first step. And to the extent that, this is a process that we all are familiar with and we've all been through, we know that down the road there will be a public hearing and there'll be opportunities to be heard. And so I think it's important for us to move forward. Also, to the extent that anybody might have a criticism of the order itself and the stipulation, that's certainly nothing that we can do anything about or really hear anything about. It is. Well,
why don't you could do that after. We have 2 public hearings that we're late for.
yeah, we are, that's true, we
Just
do.
do that and then maybe take some public comment.
We'll do the public hearings and then take public comment on this?
Just for a couple minutes.
We can, do you want to do the consensus items first?
Sure.
Yeah, let's go through those.
Let's go through those, okay, because we do have public hearings that we do need to get to. All right. The board should advise the applicant as to whether the map should be revised to depict the zoning line, the lot area of each zoning district, and coverage calculations based on this information.
Yes.
I presume
Yes.
that there aren't any objections to that. The planning board should advise the applicant as to whether floor plans and seating plans should be submitted. And I think that answers that question. Yes, okay. The board should determine whether the applicant should provide a narrative regarding the use of the garages and the 11 boat slips for parking, including information as to whether these spaces will be dedicated exclusively for restaurant parking.
Yes.
And again, no objections.
Yeah,
The board,
One minor point, Sam, on that. It looks like they're showing parking in the garage and immediately in front of the garage doors. So,
well, narrative, providing a narrative, I think is, gives us the opportunity to make sure it covers all ground.
I do want to make sure, though, in answering these questions, because these are all good planning questions that we want to say yes to, but I want to make sure we don't send the applicant a letter that contradicts the stipulation, because that might be a bad look
That's
for the
a
town.
very good idea.
So before you send, we say we want to see seating plans, I do. I want to make sure that we're supposed to ask for
I
that,
tell you what, before that letter goes out,
because,
So, yeah,
vet
send it
it
to council.
through council.
thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. The board should I did that. The board should consider whether parking calculations that include all of the existing and proposed uses should be provided on the site plan.
Yep.
The planning board should decide whether to request that copies of the San Juan sanitary system details and the sanitary density flow calculations for the entire site be submitted to the file.
Yep.
Any objections? Okay. The board should advise whether the details of the retaining walls, including elevations that show height, material, and color, should be submitted, and screening of the retaining walls and any commercial parking on the residentially zoned portion of the site provided.
Yes.
The planning board should advise the applicant whether parking calculations that include all of the existing and proposed uses should be provided on the site plan.
Yes.
The board should advise the applicant as to whether an updated flagging of the wetlands is required and an updated wetland line depicted on the site plan.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The board should discuss with council whether the parking area depicted on the DEC 1 would represent the expansion of a non-conforming use.
Very much so.
Very prescient. No objection to that? No. The board should discuss whether a stage 1A and 1B archaeological study should be conducted for areas of the residentially zoned portion of the lot that are to be disturbed.
Definitely.
Yep.
Yeah, I quite agree. And, drum roll, the planning board should determine whether to request lead agency status for the project pursuant to secret.
So moved.
So moved. Is there a
Second.
second? All those in favor
Aye.
of the planning board being lead agency, or getting ahead of me? Passed and carried. Okay, so, all right, we have two public hearings. We're going to do that, and then we'll open the floor up for public comment. And I'll ask that those comments be kept, short and to the point. And with the understanding that it's the public hearing that is really the time for public comment. Be that as it may, we have, I think you're free to go. Well, you may want to
That's
stick around.
the thing.
for
Do you want to maybe
we're
do the
just
public
discussing.
comment first?
You want to do the
Yeah.
public? Yeah, you know what, for the sake of your not having to be, all right.
Chairman as well, I realize the attorney for the Sealers On application is here, but you may want to ask if there's any members of the public that are here for the public hearings. If not, then,
Well, no, we have to read in the public hearing first. And
but I'm
that's
saying, I don't know if there's
fine.
anybody that's here that's
Nobody's
to
here for it.
speak.
We could go through the public hearings like that. Isn't that what you mean?
Well, no, I actually
don't
meant
we have
that,
to read them in?
I'm not sure that there's anyone from the public here to speak on either of the hearings, so you might want to just handle the Duryea situation
Yeah, if we're gonna,
first.
if we're gonna,
All right, all right, okay, so let's, all
But
right,
you might
so,
want to ask if there is anyone here for DeSillo or,
Ask if anybody's
Or
here for
Sealers
the
On.
hearings.
all right.
Anyone here for a public
Anyone here for
hearing?
the public hearings? Is there anybody here who's going to be speaking?
There you go. There's
In
your
that
answer.
case,
Okay,
Well,
yeah.
no, but we'll do the formal reading in and opening and closing, and so that we do it according to Hoyle. But my interest is in making sure, for one thing, that because we are using outside counsel, that we use outside counsel's time in the most expedient manner. So, if there are folks here who would like to be heard with respect to the Duryea application, I'll ask you to please keep your comments to a minimum. I'm not going to say, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, but understand that, we do have other matters on. So, your name, please.
Sure, your time is very important, Sam. It's nice to see you. It's
Thank
been a
you
while.
very much.
Hello, members of the board. I'm Lisa Grenzi, live on Tuttle Road. I just want to know, I can't address the stipulation, obviously, that's been put in your lap. I do know as a planning board, your job is to represent our town laws. The stipulation is in total, as far as I'm concerned, does not adhere to our town code laws. I don't know if that's legally correct, if that can be forced upon us to allow, for the first time in history, to use a residential property in conjunction with a commercial property. That has never happened before. I've lived there 30-something years, and I have residents that have been there 60 and 70 they'll attest that that residential property was always used as residential. The fact that they're going to put in a massive septic system in a H-pod overlay, 100-year flood zone, every critical environmental, including an archaeological, significant parcel, and it is listed and it's required to have an archaeological stage 1 and 2 review. We have well water on our property. This residential parcel, development, screening, walls, parking, all these things that have never existed before, will have a great impact on our neighborhood. And we have what's one of the few neighborhoods where kids still run around, it's local, it's private, dead-end street, dirt road. We have our wells. The flooding that you talk about, I have seen Fort Pond Bay come right through the road and right into Tuttle Pond and 4 feet up, and it's going to happen again and again. It's imperative for you not to follow any stipulation, to follow the town code. The town code does not allow the uses that this stipulation put to be allowed on residential property. And if that's the case, anybody who's got a lot of money and can sway a judge is going to get the same thing that they want if they want to improve their commercial property to include their neighboring. They need parking. Oh, well, we'll sue. Guess what? Town's going to fold. We'll make a stipulation. We have a ZBA ruling on file here from 1996 or 7, where it was deemed that there was no restaurant uses on this property. There's a file, 30 years we've been waiting for site plan approval on this property. 30 years since 1991. Look it up. There's files about probably 2.5 feet tall in your department and in the zoning department and in the town clerk's department, and I'm well sure in the town attorney's department. And Joanne can attest to that. She's been around as long as this whole thing's been going on. We have proof of the usage of that residential property being single and separate. They have now molded it into one lot. It has historically been subdivided since the death of Mr. Duryea Sr., where he gave his wife the residential property and his son the commercial property. And at that time, you did not have to go before site plan approval to subdivide the land. It could be done by deed. The CO has already been issued on this property. We as residents have 60 days now to contest this CO and bring it before the zoning board of approval, which I hope is and plan that's going to happen. But your job is not to follow any stipulation that it blatantly is against our code. If you set a precedence of allowing residential property to be used in conjunction with commercial property, we're in for a lot of problems. You can figure out the parking plans. We have 15, 20 surveys filed with the parking locations, all on file. You don't need a new attorney to do that. You just need to do your homework, or actually talk to Ms. Powell or Marguerite, or talk to me. It's very easy. It's simple. There's 2 ZBA rulings on this. It's not rocket scientist. Because things have been getting out of control and Montauk is out of it, yeah, there's been 80 cars parked on that block. And it's been nothing but a fire hazard, an ambulance hazard, and overwhelming septic abuse for our neighborhood. So it is imperative you do your job and follow the town code, not a stipulation. And I think that's what you're appointed to do. So that's basically what I have to say.
Can I just ask you, you live on Tut Hill,
With Dog Shit Alley.
and do you go buy all those parking spaces?
That's correct.
To get to your house?
We have a deeded right. And I'd also like to have that included. The 60-foot deeded right-of-way that runs with the land has always been shown, it's always been excluded. You can look at your own records. That's a written right-of-way. Because it meandered off the road as it is today, as it exists, 15 or 20 years ago, we started a lawsuit, Grency versus Duryea. And we won the lawsuit, and we got a deeded 20-foot wide swath over the existing roadbed. So now you have 2 right-of-ways that have to be removed from this land, as well as the wetlands, which is not excluded from this upland. When you get down to it, that commercial property has about 1/4 of an acre of upland. unless that residential property is included with it, there will be no development. They could do a contained system similar to what was forced upon the Harvest in Montauk, and they could pump it out. We, as residents, really have no problem with what Mr. Rowan and has been going on, other than the abuse of the people going, the amount. His commercial property, he has a right to develop it. We don't have a problem with that. But when you start to touch the residential land and try to say that this has been used and it's being used and there's parking and there's this and that, and then to throw this septic system on it, then you're gonna light up the dragon.
Thank
you. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Robert Blahowski. I'm speaking on behalf of my family who owns a house directly touching Dorier's to the east on top of the hill. My main concern is he's basically taking his sewage tanks, which he pumps out every day, and it smells terrible, and moving it into my backyard. On top of that, I'll keep this very short and sweet. On top of that, I'm sure you've all driven westbound, coming down Tut Hill Road, over the hill, coming towards Dorier's. That's one car fits by there. You put 84 parking spots with all these people in there, it's dangerous. In a pickup truck, and my pickup truck, as I'm coming up that hill, you can't see over the front of your hood and what's coming around that curve. So that kind of juts into my family's property, which is basically, I feel like what would happen is they would, because they believe he has the right to do this, is to take front of my property away, to widen the road, to make this a 2-lane wider road for more traffic to go through to his restaurant. Those are our concerns.
Okay.
Thank you.
very much. Are there any other members of the public?
Good evening. Happy to see everyone here alive. My name is David Gruber. I live in Hardscrabble, which is about as far as you can get from Tuttle Road and still be in the town of East Hampton. So I don't want to speak to the specifics of what's happening and not happening on Tut Hill Road, but I am very concerned about the integrity of the legal process in this town, and I want to speak to that. I am a member of the Bar of the State of New York, and oddly enough, I happen to have expertise on the subject of when particular persons can be bound by legal judgments. Haven't thought about it in a long time, but I wrote a law review article, the Michigan Law Review, 40 years ago on that subject. That was excerpted in a civil procedure textbook. So, one of your members noted earlier that you were not involved with this stipulation. In fact, the planning board is not a party to this lawsuit that was settled by the stipulation. It's not even clear that the town is bound by the stipulation, since there was no resolution adopted by the town board authorizing this stipulation. Perhaps the town attorney is bound, but I don't know what the point of that would be. But that's not really the point here. Fact is that the planning board is not subject to the supervision of the town board. It is an independent body. It is chartered under the laws of the state of New York and constituted by the town board. The town board is not obliged to create a planning board. It's given the power to do so by the state. But when it does so, that planning board is independent. You are appointed for specific terms, and you do not follow instructions from the town board. The town board cannot say to you, on this application, you were to rule this way, or you were to take this to be the facts. It simply doesn't have the authority to do that. And it doesn't gain the authority to do that by entering into a stipulation with another party, even when a court so orders, unless you are also a party to that lawsuit, because there's no jurisdiction in that court over this planning board. You are not what's called in privity with the town board, which means you are not a party that's considered to be identical to the town board. You're an independent body. There's also something called a juridical fact, which is kind of an oxymoron, because a juridical fact tends to be something that's not actually a fact. And the reason for this is that courts make mistakes. We're all human. And courts can find things and make rulings that turn out to be wrong. For certain purposes, it doesn't matter. If the parties before a court, or a court decides a juridical fact, that may bind the parties who stand before that court. And for their further business on that matter, they have to treat that as a fact, whether it's an actual fact or not, and whether it turns out to be incorrect. Much of what's in that stipulation constitute juridical facts, things that the court is saying, these are the facts for purposes of these two parties. The only problem with that is the wrong party was in court because you're not there. And you can't be bound by a finding of juridical fact when you're not a party to the lawsuit. Now, obviously, you're not going to rely on my legal advice on this matter. You're going to be in an executive session, and you're going to be talking to your counsel. But perhaps you will be better armed to ask the right questions when you get there. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Are there any other comments from the public? Okay, I thank those who spoke from the public for keeping it to a minimum and understanding that, again, it's not a public hearing. Of course. Okay, that having been said, we are now going to move on to the next items, which are the public hearings that are scheduled. And council, thank you very much. We'll look forward to working with you.
As do I.
Thank you. Yeah, I need the planning. Who's the lucky?
Sharon, do you have a?
So, well, is that all I'm going to read, is what's highlighted?
Do you have it? Thanks, okay.
Do you have to read the whole thing? You have to read the whole thing.
It's short.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
It's
fine.
not that bad.
I just saw the highlights, so I wasn't sure.
And
Let's
then you're
let
next,
them-
and
let's
Lou,
let-
then you're next. Lou, you're next with Chisilla. Do you have that public hearing notice? You'll be after Sharon. It's probably going to happen quickly.
I have to read this whole thing.
Yeah.
My cheat card can't help you now,
so.
Lou. Just resolutions.
Yeah, I forgot
Should I
it.
just go?
I've got it on my
Go?
desk.
Okay, folks, we're ready to go.
Okay, so public hearing notice. Take notice that a public hearing will be held before the East Hampton Town Planning Board at Town Hall, 159 Pantica Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, March 6, 2019, at 7 p.m., or as soon thereafter as this matter may be heard, to consider the application of Sealers On Lot Line Modification 2, approval pursuant to Chapter 220, Subdivision of Land of the East Hampton Town Code, to modify the lot lines of two parcels. Lot 1 is tax number 300-170-4-23.5, is currently 52,124 square feet, and Lot 2, tax map 300-170-4-23.4, is currently 183 square feet. Lot 1 is proposed to contain 67,119 square feet, and Lot 2 is proposed to contain 94,187 square feet. The proposed lot line modification will create more rectangular shaped lots. The properties are located on the west side of South Faraday Street and the south side of Montauk Highway, Amagansett, and are situated in a neighborhood business zoning district as shown on the official zoning map of the town of East Hampton, and are identified on the Suffolk County tax map as parcels 300-170-4-23.5 and 300-170-4-23.4. Subject application is classified as an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SECRA, Part 617 of the New York Code of Rules and Regulations, and Chapter 128, Environmental Quality Review of the Town Code. A survey prepared by George Walbridge Surveyors, PC, dated revised January 24th of 2019, is available for inspection at the Planning Board offices, 300 Pantico Road, Suite 103, East Hampton, New York. I say the dated February 6th, 2019, and Samuel Kramer is chairman.
Well done.
Are there any members of the public who wish to be heard with respect to the aforesaid public hearing? Okay.
I think about my money's worth here. Richard Whalen from Landmarks, the representative for the applicant, David Sealer, and Nivey. So, I'm not very little to say here, but I do want to note there is an error, a typographical error in the notice on the existing lot size for lot 1, which is currently lot 4 in the Sealer Zone lot modification. The existing lot size right now is 52,124 square feet, not 59,124 square feet.
Oh, it says, what I read was 52.
Yeah, it's not 52, it's 59.
Oh, 59.
The only thing I want to mention besides that is, obviously, the purpose of the request for the lot line modification is that the commercially zoned lot, which is here, is shaped essentially like a hacksaw with all of these little useless appendages. Even the residential lot is not really very well shaped. It's 600 feet long and only averages about 130 feet in width. So reformatting things gives us more regularly shaped lots. The zoning boundary will cut through proposed lot 1. We will probably ask the town board to change that. Even if they did not, doesn't matter, we would still prefer the more regularly shaped lot. Final comment is the proposed lot 1, which is the primarily will be the commercially used lot, is around 9,000 square feet, 8,000 square feet larger with a lot line modification than that actual shaped lot is today. We have agreed that we would file a declaration of covenants and restrictions to stipulate that in the future, when any commercial development occurs in this lot, the pre-existing, that is that 59,000 square foot number, not the new 67,000 square foot number, will be the basis for calculating any coverage figures that on that property, building coverage and total lot coverage, because we're not trying to get the benefit of any larger lot. So in terms of the lot size, the lot for the commercially used property, the lot line modification will be lot area neutral.
Great.
Thanks very much.
Just for the record, I just wanted to let the board know I have the affidavit of mailing and the affidavit of publication. It's all in order, posting, it's all in order, and I'll submit it for the file.
Very good, thank you. Should have asked for that, I guess,
All right.
before we sent you through that.
No worries. I didn't want to interrupt Rick while he's speaking, so.
All right, so, are there any other members of the public who wish to be heard on this public hearing?
Motion to close?
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is passed and carried. Okay. Next,
Okay.
we have another public hearing.
Right.
John, do you do the, before Lou reads the public notice, you want to just give us the,
Yeah,
maybe off the hook?
I just got it, so do you have, here, the receipts are here. Yes, I have the affidavit of service and posting, and it's in proper order, and I'll submit it up to the file, board's records.
Obviously, you can do whatever you'd like to do, but in the past, what we've done is the committee member will read the public hearing notice. Then you would ask the town attorney if the affidavit of service and posting is in order, and then you would ask me to just give a brief overview of the map.
I apologize for my
No,
ignorance
I
of
took
our
no
way
offense
of
to you
doing
cutting
things.
me off, but I'm
Not-
just saying
not a
that's how
problem.
we.
Okay, well, then we'll continue with
Problem,
the tried and true method. In that case, well, we've already gotten counsel stating the affidavits in order, so I'll have Lou read the public hearing, and then,
Lou Reed,
Okay.
yuck, yuck, yuck. That was Lou Reed.
may you rest in peace.
Silence, please.
Go right ahead.
Take notice that a public hearing will be held before the East Hampton Town Planning Board at Town Hall, 159 Pantago Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, March 6, 2019, at 7 p.m., or as soon thereafter as this matter may be heard, to consider the application of Roy Tusillo, site plan special permit approval pursuant to Article 5 and 6 of Chapter 255 of the East Hampton Town Code, to enlarge a pre-existing non-conforming single-family residence. The existing 629 square foot gross floor area, one-story residence, is proposed to have a 260 square foot first floor addition, a 396 square foot new second story, and an attached 354 square foot second-story deck. Access to an existing foundation via Bilco doors is also proposed. The property contains 5,800 square feet 0.132 acre and is located on the south side of South Emerson Avenue, Montauk, and is situate in a resort zoning district as shown on the official zoning map of the town of East Hampton, and is identified on the Suffolk County tax map as parcel number 300-50-1-25. Subject application is classified as a Type 2 action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SECRA, Part 617 of the New York Code of Rules and Regulations, and prepared by George Walbridge Surveyors, P.C., dated revised January 22nd, 2019. A set of plans prepared by Zwerko, Ortman, and Hugo Architects, dated revised October 31st, 2017, including existing plan and elevations, Exhibit 4.1, proposed plans, A-2.1, proposed elevations, A-4.1, dated revised September 6, 2017. Additional details, IA residential wastewater treatment, C2, and sanitary details, IA residential wastewater treatment, Z-1, dated August 31st, 2017, and a revegetation plan prepared by East Hampton Land Planning, dated revised January 3rd, 2019, are available for inspection at the Planning Board Office, Suite 103, 300 Pantago Place, East Hampton, New York, dated February 6, 2019.
Okay. Eric. This is the survey of the property. The proposal is to do additions to an existing residence. Normally, the planning board wouldn't review an application for a residence, but this is in the resort zoning district, which requires a special permit for expansion of a residence. They're proposing 2 parking spaces, a new alternative sanitary system, a second-story addition, an addition on the first floor, and then a revised patio. Obviously, this is south of South Emerson, right along the water in downtown Montauk. The bluff crest is here. So obviously, given that they had to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals to get relief. The zoning board actually required them to reduce the size of the patio during the course of their review, but they have approved it, and it's complete and therefore ready for you to make a decision, provided there's no public comment.
Eric, is that the patio, or is that the approved patio, or?
No, this is proposed.
No,
Is
I
that the
mean-
one the ZBA, he means,
Yeah.
is that
Yes,
adjusted to
yeah,
ZBA?
this plan reflects what the ZBA has
Okay,
approved.
That's, yeah.
Please. Are there any members of the public who wish to be heard on with respect to this application? Counsel?
I'm going to make it really brief. Just to clarify a little of what Eric said, John Tarbett for the applicant. The zoning board also required us to move the house back, so it's more of a tear down rebuild than it is than an addition at this point. Square footage has all stayed the same. They just we weren't able to move it back much further than it is now, but it's technically not. It's technically not a renovation. It's really a tear down rebuild.
Does that trigger a new septic system?
It did, yeah.
And the IA would be, the low
Yeah, that's an
nitrogen
IA system would be.
That's actually a good thing, okay. Sorry if it's a lot of work, but that'll be good in the long run.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to be heard with respect to this public hearing?
Motion to close?
So
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed and carried. Okay. Next, we have, Lou's not here. He'll be right back? Okay. Lou's not here to do Oceanside, but we'll do Oceanside.
We can get started.
Yeah. All right.
We can get started.
AT&T. It's gonna take 2 seconds.
AT&T is going to take 2 seconds.
Your singular wireless, that's a fast one.
The wireless.
All right.
Whenever you want. That gentleman is here for AT&T.
You want to do this?
It's up to you.
Why don't we just do that?
That's a short one.
What? Why don't we,
Take a while.
yeah, that's gonna take a while. All right. Let's get the things out of the way.
I think the singular
Yeah.
wireless won't take very long.
All right, let's do.
Lou's,
Eric, can you do singular? What do you have up there right now?
This is Oceanside.
Let's do
Just-
Oceanside.
You want to do
Back.
AT&T, I mean.
No, do Oceanside.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Liz back. Oh, my Lord, up and down, up and down.
He's like, oh, out of here.
They're taking it back.
Okay, so Oceanside, we're on?
Yes.
Yeah, do we have anyone here who's here on Oceanside?
Yes.
You're here on Oceanside? Oceanside?
After me speaking, but before the board has,
Oh, yeah.
As for the applicant.
if you'd like. and if you-
Well, that's an unusual way of doing things, but.
It is unusual, but I think in this instance, it's probably the most appropriate way to approach the subject. I do believe we have a member of the board, Mr. Cortese, who has already expressed his opinion prior to his appointment to the planning board with respect to this project. He's communicated both with the planning board and the zoning board with respect to his position on this project. So we already know his opinion. He's predisposed to a denial on this particular project, so we'd ask that he recuse himself.
Well, I guess that would be the kind of thing that would come up first. Then.
Exactly. That's why I kind of had to get up here first. There is a letter in the planning board file from the Ditch Plains Association that was signed by Mr. Cortese. He has been in regular contact with my client prior to his appointment to this board with respect to his position regarding the application.
Council.
Well, a recusal is a decision that has to be made by the individual board member that's accused of having any kind of a conflict or predisposition to a certain outcome, because the issue is whether or not their prior involvement indicates that they're unable to make a fair and reasonable determination based on the file and the information in the file. So I'd have to ask him to, give us his response to the claim of a conflict.
Do you want me to?
Well, yeah, that's council's asked, and the issue of recusals have been raised, so you're going to have to decide whether to recuse yourself.
Okay, I prefer not to be recused, but before I make my decision, I don't want to create any extraordinary legal issues that may not be necessary, if I just recuse myself. I have been involved with this project very closely. Everything that this young lady has said is true. I have written letters pointing out certain drawbacks of the application. I have talked to the applicants many, many times. They've contacted me, by the way. I'll recuse myself, just because, only for the reason that I don't want anything that could possibly be, any problems that could possibly be caused at a later date.
That's fine. To the extent that you are going to recuse yourself, you probably should leave the table.
Okay. I should have waited till now to go to the bathroom.
We know. But Lou, that, just so we're clear, that was something that you were going to report on, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
okay,
definitely
all right,
was.
So we're going to have
Yeah.
to talk about that then.
Yeah.
All right, you can step out for a moment and we'll discuss this. Since there's, the question is this. Since Mr. Cortese's recused himself and he's the person who is
the committee,
is going to be reporting on the committee, we might not be able to go forward tonight with respect to this application, and we should probably reassign it. Does anybody, do you feel differently, or?
Well,
I
think you
we can
could
give
probably
our opinions.
listen to Eric's,
Yeah.
overview of the application as it stands now, and then decide how you want to move forward after hearing that.
Because I mean, if there's going to be something from the committee, we'll have to reassign it, right?
Right.
All right.
But don't we each prepare fully for every application regardless
Yes,
of
we do,
territory?
but usually there's, somebody takes the lead. And,
Yeah.
But you do have situations where somebody gets ill at the last moment and somebody fills in. I mean, I don't know that there's any legal requirement to have the exact liaison assigned.
No, that there isn't. Liaisons are a matter of convenience for us, that I know.
But
So-
we should assign it to someone else.
We should
going
assign it to
forward,
someone else
yeah.
going forward, and it's not, well, All right, why don't you do your report, and then
See,
we'll see if somebody
before-
wants to take the
Eric,
leading
before
or.
you go, I just want to say that my understanding of, conflicts of interest does not include having a strong opinion about them. And I don't know if Lou got enough. He was concerned about a legal. He doesn't have any financial interest or any family financial interest. He just had a point of view, and the town board, fully aware of that, chose to appoint him to the planning board. So I don't see why it disqualifies him.
Well, all right, but it's up
But
to
it's
each
not my
individual
call.
member,
Individual's
understood,
decision
but it's
as
up
to whether or
to
not
each
they
member
can
to
Right.
decide.
Okay.
But
You know,
he made
in an unbiased
He
fashion.
made the
I just-
decision.
I'm
He heard what was stated,
Right.
and he made a determination based on whatever analysis he brought to it, and so that's what we're going to have. So, Eric, it's all yours.
Okay. This is an application to convert a multi-unit motel building into a restaurant. They're proposing a 1,000 square foot basement and a roughly 1,400 square foot first floor for the restaurant, as well as two deck additions, one on the first floor, one on the second floor, both roughly around 500 square feet. Restaurant is an accessory use to a resort or motel and requires a special permit. At the last review, the board stated that the only outstanding issue was to submit for the applicants to submit a narrative regarding the nature of use. They have submitted this. They've also proposed a cap of 225 people on site, which was requested by some of the board members. However, the code has since changed. The town board adopted new special permit standards. Specifically, they changed the parking requirement and said the parking requirement is now calculated by adding the parking requirement for the principal use based upon existing code requirements at the time of the application, plus 50% of the parking for the required accessory use. They also added a provision in there that allows the board discretion to waive that, provided it's appropriate. And then they also said that you can't have more than a third of the area of the motel devoted to the accessory use, whether indoor or outdoor, which is a new change. And based upon that, it seems that the parking requirement would be 38 spaces on site. Currently, there are 16 that are illustrated on site, entirely on site, that being 11 that could fit entirely on site in the front, and then the 5 new spaces in the back that the applicants are proposing. And that third of the motel area would equal about 7,000 square feet. We had previously noted that the lawn area to the rear, on the rear of the parcel is about 10,000 square feet. We'd also previously noted that there's a section of the code that requires that the planning board designate any areas of outdoor dining. Doesn't say that the board can, it says you must do this. And we have repeatedly recommended that you prohibit the serving of food and beverages on the lawn. We continue that recommendation. I believe if the board is to approve this as a restaurant that is truly accessory to a resort or motel use, that the lawn area not be utilized for serving of food and beverage. And then you will notice in the memorandum, I did also copy what had previously been supplied, which is the maximum occupancy ratings of the different areas of the site, which the board had considered. And I will note that the maximum occupancies of the 2 motel buildings, the restaurant building, and then the decking would roughly work out to about 225 people, which is what the applicants have offered in the narrative as a cap. But you obviously should discuss what specifically they're proposing as far as controlling the number of people on site with them. So in conclusion, the application's still incomplete, and that's really based upon the fact that it appears that the parking requirement has greatly increased. The applicant should address how they're going to meet the new code standard. And additionally, we recommend that you designate the areas where food and beverage will be served.
When you say served, I mean, it's a pretty open space, right? What we're talking about there, there's no walls, there's no fences that would prevent
Correct.
someone from taking their meal or whatever they might have and bringing it elsewhere on the property. So when you say served, that means just within that area where food is, I'm trying to figure out how you're gonna prevent food from traveling.
Yeah, no, I
People
understand.
from traveling.
I guess it makes sense. And if somebody just walks on the lawn with a beer, oh, that, you know, but if somebody's calling code enforcement, they're not gonna drive from East Hampton to Montauk, you know, for that one person. They're gonna be gone by the time that happens.
Yeah.
I think the real fear is that without a mass gathering permit, and if they get a mass gathering permit, that's fine, that they pack the lawn full of people and that it's used for consumption and service. I mean, I would leave it to council to determine how you would word that condition if you do make one. But the bottom line of what we're getting at is that we don't want the lawn packed full of patrons. Whether or not you call that service, consumption, you know, how you define it, I don't know. But I'm just identifying that as really, I mean, the main worry of this application is that if you give them carte blanche to operate,
That's how it's gonna work.
Okay, so here's the area of the property.
Thanks. Yeah, right.
And obviously, I mean, you can see where the area is that you could pack people.
I mean, more
This
just-
use is meant to be, first of all, an accessory restaurant use, not a bar use. A restaurant is primarily the service of food with perhaps incidental service of alcoholic beverages or other such beverages. That's what they're applying for. Obviously, the clear area where you could run into a problem is that lawn. So I'm not sure legally what is the best way to prohibit the use of that lawn. Again, if they get a mass gathering permit from the town board, okay. But on a day-to-day basis, that to me is the fear.
But the applicant did, I think they did designate specific areas where they intended to have actual food service, which is going to be the restaurant and the outdoor deck, I believe, behind the restaurant. I
They've
think that's- I mean,
stated
they're here to
various
tell
things.
us,
It is
but-
not indicated on the plan, but I will leave
Okay.
that to the
All
applicant to
right.
see.
I'm sure they'll explain it to us.
While you have the picture up, where are the 5 parking spaces gonna be?
It would be roughly here. Right along here.
At the red line?
Yeah, well, this is the edge of property. I mean, it's not exact. This is our GIS, but basically you'd have to actually traverse an area that's within the right-of-way. And then from the corner of the property, you'd have about 5 spaces here. And we
They're going to
have
be
pointed
grass?
out, huh?
Were they going to be grass spaces or paved?
I believe grass.
I think, okay.
And again, actually, to point out, those items you see on the aerial are not approved items from any site plan.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Eric, just a question for you and John. If there's a cap of 225 people, does that impact a mass gathering permit or not?
It depends on what the applicants are offering as far as what the wording is and the condition.
Yeah, it would depend on how you word it. I mean, what you'd want to do is have these restrictions and limitations put in the covenant restriction filed against the property, so it would continue to apply to new owners as well. It all depends on what's agreed upon and how we write the CNRs.
So we could see if the applicant's willing to have that cap on mass gatherings as well.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it was their offer,
Yeah.
a cap. The specifics of it were not particularly detailed. But actually, just to point out, just in case you're looking at this, the red line is the property line, but this is actually pretty far off. If you see this corner right here, it actually matches up right with the corner of the swimming pool deck area. So this would all be down, which is actually why some of those parking spaces are actually technically in the right-of-way in that front parking lot.
And
So this line is...
doesn't it bring it more into that area of growth there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this, I mean, basically, you take that, you're probably, you're close to the edge of the neighborhood.
And the parking on the side has been eliminated on the road?
It hasn't been eliminated. It's, that parking is within the town right-of-way. There's been discussion, I believe, by the applicants, and you might want to ask them as to, that there was some agreement between the town and the owner of this property to use that. I'm not familiar with anything.
That's not part of the,
It's not on-site parking,
it's not on site,
as far as,
it's not on site parking. I got it, okay.
The zoning code requires that all parking be on
Site.
Gotcha, that's
Yeah.
considered off-site, okay.
or variances obtained. But
Thanks. Any other questions for Eric? The applicant?
Good evening, Chairman Kramer, members of the board. I'm Britton Bistrian. I'm here for the owners of this property, Oceanside Owners LLC. I'm joined by Tiffany Scarlato, who's the land use attorney on the project. We've been in front of this board a few times, beginning in the spring of 2017. I know there's some new board members, so I thought maybe I'd give an overview because a lot of that, especially since you don't have the member presenting the projects, I will just run over it quickly. The project is to remove 4 hotel rooms from, so let me just zoom out a second. We call this building 1, building 2, building 3. 2 and 3 are purely hotel rooms currently. Number 1 is, and these 2 are both 2-story buildings. This is a 1-story building. It has hotel rooms as well as the lobby reception office area. The project is to remove the 4 hotel rooms from building 1 and convert the area into a food service amenity. The original application proposed more of a deli, grab-and-go type retail accessory use, which was prohibited by a local law while we were in the planning board process. We revised our application to propose a 16-seat restaurant. The sole purpose of this restaurant is to provide a food service amenity to our guests in this resort. It's called Oceanside Resort. In the world of hospitality and ratings, a hotel cannot earn a 3-star rating unless you provide on-site food service. The 3 issues for discussion that I see this evening is first is the use in the area of the restaurant. While we acknowledge that the second code change injected while we were in the planning process was a limitation on the 30% aggregate area, there's been no work proposed on buildings 2 and 3, so I have not submitted floor plans to date, but I can easily do that. We generally agree the aggregate area is somewhere in the 10,000 square foot range. 30%, we're going to be far underneath that when we take into accounting, but I have to prepare the floor plans and submit that to your file, so I will do that. Our intent is to provide food services to our guests in terms of a continental breakfast, sandwiches, casual bite in the evening. We don't want to become the new Montauk Eatery. We don't want to become the new Montauk Hotspot. We don't want to become a bar. This resort, if you have been there, we've operated now for 2 summers. It's really peaceful. It's really tranquil. It's a family-friendly resort. People, if we had 500 people on the lawn, we wouldn't be able to command the room rate that we do. That's not the intent here. And if there's creative ways to put that in CNRs, we're open to that discussion. I also want to mention that one of the owners of the property owns 2 local Montauk restaurants. The desire is not to draw away from the Montauk restaurants. We want to just provide somewhere where someone can eat if they come off the beach or they're sitting by the pool so that they don't have to, get into town. It's quite a long walk. It's going to, hop in their cars. We're trying to prevent that. We've analyzed our room count, our guest count, and the restaurant seating of 16. And we've already proposed this, but I'm repeating. We are only providing food service within the physical confines of Building 1 in the restaurant area, the decks adjacent, and the pool area. We are happy to not provide any food service on the lawn, food or drink service.
When you say provide, do you anticipate patrons taking their food out to the lawn?
I don't envision that. Our purpose of the restaurant is so that somebody who's a hotel guest can sit there and have breakfast. Somebody who's at the pool can order a sandwich, and the restaurant component is the least of those. It's really breakfast and lunch that we're targeting. I don't see people.
You going for a bar? Are you going for a bar also?
There's a small bar area in the restaurant, yes.
So, Britton, when you say serve, you mean wait staff?
Wait staff.
Would come out to the pool, for example, in your...
Which is typical in a
I'm
resort.
just asking.
Yes, so we would provide service to the inside of the restaurant, the decking, which is all, there's physical confinements. There's those railings around the deck. The pool is completely enclosed as a pool has been. So there is contained areas that we would be providing food service.
And you would do a CNR to not take food service out to the back?
To the lawn? Absolutely.
You do that? Okay.
And I believe we stated that in our narrative. If we didn't, I'm stating it now. We also heard the planning board at our last review that there was a concern about this number of people. because we do have such a huge number of hotel rooms, and you can have 4 guests in a hotel room, we found that the number that we were most comfortable with was 225. The fire marshal rated occupancy is significantly higher than that. We don't want that number. We felt comfortable at 225. And then the other issue on the sanitary system, I think it's important to note this, because what I'm trying to establish for the new board members is that we've had some curveballs. I don't know if you can find another planning board application that had 4 laws change that directly impacted them while they were in the planning review process. I've also think that we've been sensitive to the concerns, and we're trying to address everything as efficiently as we can. We have a valid health department permit on this property to, there's 3 sanitary systems. Each building has its own system because they were put in at different times. We have a valid health department permit for a conventional system. We had originally proposed only to upgrade the building 1 system because that's the only building we were doing work on. Then the low nitrogen law came in, law number 3, that changed for us. And we proposed to do a low nitrogen system just for building 1 because we weren't doing any work on building 2 and 3. We heard feedback from the board, we heard feedback from a community group, that we should really be the people that spend a lot of money upgrading this whole property. So the proposal in front of you is all new low nitrogen systems for all the buildings, even though we're not doing any work on 2 of the 3 of them. That has a big price tag. It's about $100,000 of money that isn't directly attached to the proposal at hand for the 16-seat restaurant. And I just think that should be given a little bit of airtime. That's a big price tag. The 4th code change that affected us in the planning board process was the change to the special permit standards as it pertained to pre-existing parking on the site with a motel use. Eric wrote a great memo. We thought that the parking discussion brought up the memo, and the suggesting that a parking variance is kind of premature. We need to exhaustively research the history of the site as it relates to the surrounding parking and ownership, as well as I have more room to put more parking here. So I have a big lawn. I can put a whole lot of parking on that lawn. So I would just ask that we table the parking discussion, let us put our thinking caps on and propose some more parking. I also think this red line definitely doesn't fall in the right spot because we do have some, let's call it asphalt paving, that we do have some parking. It's not just completely off our property. So I want to get a good count on how much we actually have on the property on the western portion, how much I can fit on the lawn, and what's required, and maybe we could evaluate that deeper at a future work session. I hope that, an effort has been made to address comments. We're still open to more comments, but we're kind of hoping that after 2 years, we're moving towards resolution on this particular application. And I stand ready for any questions and legal questions. I'm going to pass the buck.
Well, you're right, we have all read the report. So I guess, does anyone want to take the lead on this or have any particular specific comments that you might want to raise? Or should we just move directly to the point?
I would say, for me, the thing here is parking. And if you do, I just did quickly, if you take 225 people and they have 16 on-site parking spaces, so that's 14 people per on-site parking space, which is not realistic.
That's not an accurate number.
The 16.
I really would request that we let us put our thinking cap on. Let us give you real numbers instead of speculating, because there are some nuances. There's definitely more parking in there than that, and I'm proposing 5 down here. So I think that's a very low number.
All right.
Let us do our homework on the parking.
Okay, so that's fine then.
I think that's where I'm at too. I think the parking is really, again, I live in Montauk, and that's why I was asking about the off-site parking, because it's a very dangerous spot there when you're driving through. And 225 people is a lot of people. So we won't go into the parking. You're going to do your homework, and but that is a concern of mine, is the parking.
And again, we actually do not have an updated site plan.
The applicant submitted the narrative that was requested, which again, proposed the idea of the 225 people, but the code has changed since then, and maybe it's best for the applicants to submit a site plan that illustrates what they feel is reflects the parking requirement, what's on site, what's off site, and
Is there anything else that's?
Would you also like me to add, and you can tell me how you'd like it, but maybe dining service areas on that?
Yeah,
How would I do
definitely.
it?
Yeah, actually, that's one of our points.
Just a notation? Okay.
Well, we have some questions, right?
Yeah, it's one of the questions.
service and dining limited to the following areas.
So how many rooms is it? Sorry, I just new to
Currently 34.
34 rooms.
It's 30. And
So the 225 is people coming from town. I mean, when you start to say a number like 225 is allowed, so people are coming there from.
some of the rooms have multiple, they're not just rooms.
Right.
Some of them are double rooms. You can have 4 people, with families and kids.
Okay.
And that's another thing too. I guessed that the number of required on-site parking spaces would be 38 based upon an assumption that there's 1 bedroom per unit. Parking calculation is not by unit, it's actually
by bed.
bedroom.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's the case, so perhaps.
That's why I'd like to have time
Yeah,
to study
it's like
that and give you real numbers before we
Good.
throw out other ones.
Could we just ask that you clarify whether the 225 cap, whether you're proposing a cap that would apply to mass gathering permits as well as normal operation?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be reassuring.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a bar on the premises now? Is there a bar presently in the building?
There's in the lobby, there is an area in which you can purchase drinks and chips. That's always been part of the lobby function.
Have we seen a floor plan for the restaurant? I mean, it's been
Yes.
a while now. Okay.
And that
And
has,
what is the bar, the proposed
That
bar
hasn't changed.
is what? There's seats at the bar, or how's that set
well,
up?
there's only 16 seats. There's a,
16
so
seats
there's
in the
only
rest-
a couple high tops. I don't have the tables committed to memory, but I believe it's a couple high tops and
Okay,
They have an existing liquor license,
Correct.
an on-site liquor license.
right.
Thank you for the low nitrogen systems. That's big. That's very cool and that's really great that you're doing that. And I was the one that was sort of banging the table about that from the beginning. So I feel very personally gratified about that.
And the only reason we really didn't want to do it
I know,
was
because
because we
yeah.
really want this Montauk sewer. This is
Yeah,
the client who actually was willing to put money towards
Right.
getting the Montauk
Right.
sewer, but when we understood that was maybe years from
Right.
now, at first we thought it could be something that could happen within a year, and since we've been here for 2 years, that wasn't insurmountable.
We were hopeful
But,
for that too, but this is a good offer.
Doesn't seem like that's gonna be-
It's the right thing to do, so thank you for doing that. Eric, maybe this is a question for you. I'm just looking at your calculations here in terms of the building number 1. I mean, Britton, you'll work with Eric on this when you give him the number of beds per room and so forth, because I just want to make sure that 225 number is going to work. And if you're proposing it, I suppose it is. I'm eager to see how many parking spaces can actually fit in that front lot, because that's something we've been curious about for a while. But
We have, there's a numbered plan but it needs to be updated.
Yeah.
So I just need the time to update it.
because the parking is still, I have the same issue with the parking as everybody else does, I think. And designating where the areas, well, anyway, you'll do the questions.
Yeah. I think, in the past, obviously, we talked a lot about the fact that there was some marketing going on, a year or so ago for this facility that kind of seemed to indicate that there was an encouragement for people to come to events and do those kinds of things. I think the idea of putting a cap on it is really great. I think that's a really good move in that direction. But as we know, owners change, attitudes change. There's sort of we have a history in this town of people, being flagrantly ignoring things like, occupancy limits and those sorts of things, and, waiting to be, have code enforcement come after them, rather than kind of abide by the law. So it's my only real concern is just that we want to prevent some future situation where there are people wandering out onto that lawn with drinks from the food service area. I'm not sure what really can be done in the way of
If we have effective CNRs that
limit the
limit the amount of.
That would take care of that, I think.
I would hope. I mean, look,
Well,
there's
it's
always
gonna address
enforcement
it, yeah,
issues.
right.
There's always going to be, you know, a kind of a symbiotic issue with the town's going to, well, we're going to, you know, impose certain things, and it's going to be up to the applicant to make sure that those things are complied with.
Right.
And if somebody down the road takes over the place and doesn't comply, that's why there's CNRs, because they're there.
Yeah, I
for
was
them
just
too.
sort of thinking out loud whether there was something else we could sort of put in place. But I really feel like you guys have gone a long way here, and I'm really appreciative, particularly with the IA system. I'm pleased with that. The parking is going to be the big issue. That's the big issue.
Now, Ed, based on your point, bringing up the marketing stuff we saw, there was this was a website that had concerts and et cetera. And then we've also had commentary from the public that the public beach there, that the resort puts chairs and umbrellas and some of the food service, drink service goes to the beach, possibly. So I'm not concluding anything, but I just wanted to leave the beach component, like, in your mind.
It would have to be part of the CNRs. You know?
Well, it's
I mean,
off-site, though.
It's a public beach.
It's a public, you know, I was gonna say, I don't know, maybe kind
So that's a
of.
code.
I mean, I don't think we can do anything to consider that, really.
Well, we can say
can't
that they're
consider
not going
parking
to take
spaces
things
that are on the
off-site.
property.
What's that?
Are you,
They can't
Randy,
jump
are
on.
you saying that, like,
Forget it.
your concern is that they're going to have wait staff bringing drinks and things through the motel, the hotel, I should say, off property onto the beach on like trays?
Or that, I'm not sure.
Well, if our CNRs say that food service is allowed in 3 locations,
Yeah.
the restaurant, the deck, and the pool,
And nowhere
wouldn't
else.
that, and nowhere else, wouldn't that be
That,
covered?
that would be,
The beach would certainly qualify as else, so.
It's a question about service,
But they
right?
do-
It
but
is
they
this
do-
question about service versus consumption, right? It is that.
Yeah, but there's
Right.
nothing you can do. I mean, what are you gonna do? Say somebody can't buy a beer and bring it down? I'm
Yeah.
assuming
Yeah,
serve
you
it.
could.
Well, can't, all right.
no, that I don't feel like we need to do that, but there was commentary about the privatization of a public beach.
Yeah, no, that's a
Yeah.
major concern, and I don't
And that-
want that. But,
Yeah.
But there's actually pretty good, decent town parking here. And you have to have a resident sticker, so if you're staying at the hotel, you don't have a beach sticker to park there. And that is heavily enforced in this town.
sure is.
You're right.
Probably the most enforced rule we have is parking in a spot without a beach sticker.
Yeah.
Those who have beach stickers appreciate that.
Very true.
Yeah, right.
Oh. All right. I think that we could probably address any of these kind of issues. If the applicant is amenable to covenants and restrictions, then I think that gets us halfway there, if not more. So it's just a question of writing them in such a way that we address the concerns, valid concerns of the board.
But you're going to come back to us with.
Well, I still have comments, too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
no,
hasn't
no,
had a chance.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't want to interrupt you. You finished, go ahead. Well, first of all, I think that the big issue here is the parking, obviously. I know you don't want to go into all the details. We don't have to, but the law change seems significant.
But the law changed, just to be clear, it's not that I don't want to go into them, it's that the law changed from when I submitted my last submittal
No, I
and when I'm
understand.
hearing it now. So I didn't
No,
make an
it's just-
interim submittal.
But in the interest of moving it along, I'm going to comment on the parking a little bit, just because I think you should know where at least I stand. I would hate to.
Do you have the
not-
details to comment on it? I mean, are you going to comment on numbers? Because I think that's unfair.
Well, let me make comments, and if you can, feel free to interrupt, and we can talk. I mean, one question I'd have for our council, first of all, is the new law does say the code requirements at the time of application. Well, he's got dibs.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Ian.
At the time of application, what does that mean? Because the parking requirements that are at the time of application, I'm assuming this is still the time of application as opposed to first submittal. I just don't know what that means.
John.
I'm sorry?
So,
Thank you, John.
to me, the driver of this has, at this point for sure, it's always been about parking somewhat, but then the town board made a code change that says instead of having any sort of grandfathered in parking, that we look at the time of application, you know, the total parking of the primary use and 50% of the accessory use. What does the word "at the time of application" mean? Is that when the application is submitted?
That's what was the code requirement if this was a new proposal on the day that this application was submitted?
Well,
If there was no hotel, restaurant, or anything there, what's the parking requirement of the code?
okay, well, I mean, that's going to really drive things.
That's, but then, there's also the additional provision that says this board has the authority to reduce that requirement if they deem it appropriate.
I know, but
And the idea was-
how we look at this, if it's when they first submitted their application, the law was very different than, well, it says at the time of application. I think you just said it's that when they first submitted it.
No.
I assume that now is the.
But the parking requirement at the time of submission for a new proposal was just the same now as it was then. It's no different. If you wanted to build a hotel with a restaurant, you had a parking requirement. Your application came in 2018. What's the parking requirement in 2018 to build a new hotel and new restaurant? Accessory restaurant. So that's what you base it on.
It takes your vested away.
Yeah, it basically
Basically
takes away the
proposing everything that-
grandfathering concept. I mean, it doesn't
Okay.
take it away from the sense that anybody who has it and is grandfathered is not looking to
So
do
the new
anything
law,
else loses it.
I'm just making sure the new law
Yeah.
fully applies. And
Yeah.
there's no, it doesn't apply because you guys submitted before the new law was enacted. That's all I'm making sure. Does that make sense?
No, I see what you're asking. But the
I
intent
think
of
we're
it-
in agreement that the new law applies.
Everyone- okay,
And we're
okay.
gonna
Well,
apply it.
Then I think that it's gonna be tricky because we have, well, first of all, I wanna say this is in a resort zone. It makes all the sense in the world in a resort zone, you don't have residential neighbors, that this use fits. The issue is with parking. The use is not a problem for me at all. I think that it's a fully appropriate area. But if this new code is now instructing us to, and I was, by the way, I took the building inspector's determination before that you were grandfathered in, so to speak, and that what you had to add was related to what you were taking away and what you were proposing. But that's not what the code says anymore. It now says that you have to meet 100% of the parking for the existing use plus 50% of the accessory use, and we have to ensure there's sufficient parking. It's going to be difficult to ensure sufficient parking without adding a lot of spaces. I won't get into specific numbers, but we'll need to know. The code is basically directing us to be careful here, and that's changed. And I'm sympathetic to the applicant because it's changed, but I just want to be clear that, you know, I don't think, we don't write the code, whether I agree with it or I don't, is not important here. But my opinion, I want to be clear, has changed because the code is telling me to change what we analyze. And the parking, I think, is problematic. It does obviously allow for us to waver on that or be more lenient. And I think it'd be fully appropriate for us to be more lax about parking, recognizing that the accessory use would be solely for the guests and not drawing anybody in at all. And so while I think the 225 people limit is generous and would have been really convincing before the new law, it's tricky now because that is basically double the amount of people that can exist, that can, you know, be in those rooms, at least by the numbers and where do those people come from? How do they park? It's problematic. So I would want to see some way to limit service only to guests. Or these are, by the way, these are working suggestions, and I don't mean, I certainly don't mean to be combative in any way. I just want to voice my concern so that the applicant and everybody can work on finding solutions and progressing this application forward. If there's a way to limit it only to serving people who already staying at the hotel, well, that would alleviate my concern of, you know, not having sufficient parking. I do think that, you know, we would have to talk about consumption and service of, you know, food and beverage from the restaurant on the lawn area. I do think we have to be concerned about somebody buying in the restaurant and then going out onto the lawn. Maybe that's hard to enforce, but if our intention is not to allow that to happen, at least not to allow that to happen for people who aren't already guests of the hotel, I think we have to put that in somehow. And I'm open, you know, I can't write the answer to that, but I encourage the applicant to help. I do think that if we're very clear about the approvals, that anything beyond that, our real concern, or some of the concerns that Eric voiced, would require a mass gathering permit. And I think that leads us to talk a little bit about enforcement. I don't, as a planning board, want to be afraid to approve something we think is okay, because we don't think it'll be enforced. And I did talk to code enforcement about not just this, but applications in general. And they did tell me that if we're very clear about what we're allowing and not allowing, they can enforce that. And this is in fairness to the applicant. I don't want to not approve something thinking that it's not going to be enforced, because they told me, and I think it's appropriate, that if, something can be enforced, it ought to be. And I, to Randy's point about the beach, if there's something going on the beach that shouldn't be going on, I hope the town enforces that, and that's not for this board to do. I just don't want to be on a planning board that lives in fear of allowing something that should be allowed because it's not enforced. Hopefully it's not too much of a digression, but I think it's important, particularly with this application, because all the things we're talking about is not what the applicant's saying they want to do. So how do we clearly, if this goes forward and is approved, identify what we want to allow and what we don't in a way that would apply to this applicant and any future owner and can be enforced? And if the town needs to work on actual enforcement and making sure they do a better job, then so be it. I would say the same thing with the parking. Whether you have rights to the on-street parking or not, I don't know. But if you don't, I don't know why it's allowed to happen now. And if you do, then we should learn about it and incorporate it into our plan. I just think that we talk so much about these plans, and if nothing gets enforced or doesn't get enforced as it's planned, it certainly, lessens the importance of what we do. And I think that that's a little discouraging. So I don't know. I wanted to, particularly because I've been supportive of you with relation to the parking. I just want to say that the new code, if it applies, is going to change that standard, I think, quite a bit. I also want to caution against if you're illustrating service areas and dining areas, that's all going to factor into the parking too. So if you're calling the pool area a service or dining area, I think that that's going to up your parking number. And originally that wasn't part of the proposal. We sort of asked you to do that, and you have. And I think there might be implications there about what the required parking would be that wouldn't be good. So.
I think we'll address it. I think that's a slippery slope, only because you can't have people, somebody off the street's not going to come swim in a pool in a hotel. Maybe. Well, but I don't think the vast majority of
maybe not. But
maybe we have
dining areas are
wristbands or something. We'll be creative about that.
Well, and if there's a way to attach, again, I think that a resort area in a resort zone, it makes sense that you provide, beverages and food to your guests. You don't have enough parking as it is, as our code says right now. And so the concern is if there's any people coming from the outside at all, and the code is telling us we have to ensure there's sufficient parking, that's going to be a really tricky thing for us to do. So, I just, again, wanted to say that at this point so that next time you don't say, oh, you didn't say that, and string it on even farther.
And this, I'm not trying to belittle the fact that the fourth code change doesn't make it more difficult, but we've gotten through 3 other ones. So where there's a will, there's a way. We'll figure it out.
All right. Very good. All right. I don't have anything to add to the discussion at this point. I think we could move along to, obviously the parking is the big thing and controlling what goes on. It occurs to me, maybe what you do is require that if anyone's going to be buying food or beverages, that they present a room card, and that you only allow sales rather than through cash, but through room credits. That might prevent anyone from the outside world using it as a public bar.
If there are ways to do that legally, that I would be very. We're only people from the hotel.
Yeah, that one way to restrict it.
We'll research it. Absolutely.
Yeah. One other thing I want to say, and I'm sorry to do this twice in one night. I have a business near this business and sold some pumpkins to the property. So.
I've never drunk or slept in your hotel.
But I'd like to.
Yes, but I'm looking forward to the Hampton.
There's probably a restaurant you haven't sold to.
You're accusing yourself all over.
I'm not recusing, I'm just disclosing.
What happened to, we lost our,
We did, but we still have a
Okay.
quorum, so we can continue. All right, I'll go through the questions. Does the board feel that providing parking, I think they mean provided, parking is adequate, or will the applicants be required to obtain a variance under the currently proposed configuration? I think that question is pretty much mooted.
Table.
Yeah, so, you know,
variance,
yeah, well, no, that's not where they're going with it.
She
So
a waiver, they're going to our
that's what it
waiver.
says here. It says,
Well,
No,
we haven't seen a proposal.
yeah,
I know,
so-
but
She
it
wants to
says,
change it. Table the question.
it
Yeah,
says,
table.
it says variance, but I think we have the ability to waive the parking requirement.
Yeah,
We do,
but-
actually.
Yeah, but
So-
the point is that this entire question
Yes,
is
I got you,
Yeah.
I got you.
shelved for now, or tabled, if you will. All right, does the board wish to designate the areas where food and beverages from the accessory restaurant will be served?
Yes.
Yes, you know,
Yes,
yes.
loud and clear, I heard a yes.
Should a calculation be added to the site plan which confirms that no more than 1/3 of the aggregate area of the motel units will be devoted to the accessory restaurant use? And I think that, that's
And I'll do it not only on the site plan, but I will submit the floor plans that show the square footage.
very well.
Do we want to start drafting the covenant yet?
No, let them come
Okay.
back with the parking.
Okay.
And they've got
We need
to,
to add something.
they've got
Yeah.
work to do.
Relating to
Did you
parking,
give me
so
your,
Okay.
your slip?
Not yet.
Why don't you, because she's going to
sit down, thank you.
And then once you have yours done, see if Lou comes back. Okay, so are we done with that? Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody might want to throw a line out to Lou and let him know he could come on back.
AT&T?
That would be next. Well, you know.
Exactly.
Customarily,
I think you can just sit in the
folks
back.
leave the room, but,
ZBA, we should just sit in the back.
Yeah, as long as you don't roll your eyes and.
Yeah.
yeah.
For Peconic Land Trust, we just sat in the back.
I know, yeah. Yeah, you have a voucher for your pay. See, you get paid for this.
I already gave
Oh, you gave it in? Okay, in that case, do you have the, you gave it all, Jody has it? Oh, great. Okay, AT&T.
Okay, this is an application to modify an existing wireless service facility right out your window here at Town Hall. They propose to replace 6 existing panel antennas with 6 new panel antennas, replace 6 existing remote radio heads with 6 new remote radio heads, and then add 3 additional remote radio heads at AT&T's position on the tower, which is roughly near the top. They've submitted a structural analysis. I have ran it by the East Hampton Police Department. They're fine with the findings of that analysis. They do still need a radio frequency engineer's report, which is required to make sure that they're in compliance with FCC regulations, so that's still needed. That's an outstanding item. You may want to discuss whether or not you need a visual analysis. They submitted pictures of the existing facility as well as this elevation of the tower showing where the proposed changes are, as well as a schematic of their facility. But you should determine if you want additional information. And other than that, this does qualify, Tier 2 modifications qualify as minor site plans. You can waive the public hearing if you so desire. This is the 5th modification of this facility, and you recently had a modification, I believe last year, which was the 4th, and you did vote to waive the public hearing requirement. But you should discuss that and determine if you want to do that in this case. So in conclusion, the application is incomplete solely because of the RF engineer's report, and you should determine whether or not you want a public hearing.
Very well. Does the applicant wish to be heard? Thank you for waiting.
Hello, how you doing? My name is Patrick O'Rourke. I'm representing the applicant, AT&T. We did do a radio frequency report, including all the carriers on the pole with their latest modifications. I have this report here. Do you need me to submit it, or I can make as many copies as you need?
You don't have to do it immediately. You can do it tomorrow.
Okay, I'll get it to you. Basically, the visual analysis, we took pictures and we handed them in with the application. I printed up some more pictures here. It's basically, we're the top carrier on the, well, your antennas are up here, and this is us. The frame here, we're swapping out antennas, like-for-like antennas, 6 out of 9 antennas. We're swapping out remote radio heads, which go behind the antennas to help interpretate data. We're adding 3 more remote radio heads on the existing mounts behind our antennas. That's basically the whole application. And for the record, this gentleman has never sold me produce, so.
Only because you haven't asked.
You might need it.
Drive right over.
Any questions?
Got these tomatoes? Does any member of the board have any questions for the applicant?
Is this pretty much all for private cell phone use?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, they started out as cell phones, but now it's data.
Now
It's,
it's
you know,
data, right.
everyone does everything on their phone. That's why they're adding these
Streaming.
pieces of equipment behind the antennas. They interpret more data.
This is,
Hi, my name is on it. It's not an
yours.
Amagansett, but
Yeah. Well,
for some reason my name was on it.
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, because this is, an ongoing, something that keeps coming at us, I don't think we need a public hearing. If that flew last time, then I think that's okay this time as well. And I think visually, there's just not going to be much of an impact if it's there. They're just adding and changing, and so I'm okay with foregoing those things.
Agree with Sharon.
Ditto.
I agree.
Same.
Same.
Unanimous. So then,
Very much.
in answer to the question, will a public hearing be held? I think, is
I
any
mean, no.
sentiment on the board for a public hearing? No?
Not necessary.
No, I
There you
don't
are.
think we need.
I agree. It's an existing tower.
That tower is hopelessly ugly.
Which I don't even see anymore. Which I don't even see anymore.
You don't even notice it's so ugly, you just don't even see it.
Car wash?
Car wash.
Okay, this is an application to build a 5,455 square foot car wash building, a major car wash use as defined in the town code. The property's off of Springs Fireplace Road in East Hampton and Zone CI. You've had 3 previous reviews since 2016 when this was originally submitted. The board has requested wastewater calculations at each of those reviews, and additionally information as to what chemicals would be used in the actual car washing. This information has still not been provided. The applicant said it's proprietary information, but they will submit to the Health Department and the DEC for a speedies permit. They also said in an additional report that they've submitted in this most recent submission that they lose about 11 gallons per car wash from evaporation and water rolling off the car, and that the facility can accommodate 80 cars per hour. So you're talking about roughly 800 gallons of water used per hour. They said that this is probably not going to happen. They're probably not going to have 80 cars per hour, but that is what the facility can accommodate. So that seems like a large volume of water usage. Additionally, you do not have a new site plan. This is from the previous submission. The board had requested a revised site plan with various elements added to it, including a revision of landscaping along the easement there. The traffic study, a revised traffic study, has been submitted. Most importantly, the study does not compare the build scenario to the no-build scenario. That's necessary because what you need to do, the application becomes a type 1 action if the level of service on the adjacent roadway is lowered. And obviously, you can't determine if it's lowered unless you compare with the project versus without the project. And the traffic study does not do that. So we request that information to be included.
Before you move off the traffic study?
Yeah.
What's the calendar year time frame on the traffic study?
I don't know.
Does the traffic study accommodate all 12 months of the year? Is it narrow? Is it the summer? Is it the fall? Is it when?
It can be whatever you'd
No,
like.
I'm asking this particular traffic study that we have.
Well, that's the thing. The one that we have does not have real traffic counts of the existing traffic conditions. What you would do
What
is
do they do?
ideally...
What does it have?
Well, it doesn't have the existing conditions. It says, here, if we build this, here's the calculation under the traffic manual, which is the accepted, engineering version of doing it. The traffic engineers, I forget the exact term of what the manual is. But it basically says, I forget the exact number of trips per hour at peak hour. I think it was like 70-something. It says if you build it, this is the calculation based on the size of the car wash. It would generate, let's say, 70 trips per peak hour.
Right.
And then they compared that with the existing traffic on Springs Fireplace Road. There is no calculation of the volume of traffic from Maryland and Ohio Avenue from the landfill. Normally what you would do is you would take a traffic count. You would, they used DOT, county data on Springs Fireplace Road from a couple of years ago to estimate the volume. Normally what you would do is you would also take these two roads, the entrance and exit from the landfill, and you would do a real-time traffic count, preferably in the summer.
Well, that's exactly what I'm getting at. If are there traffic counts? They're not using, all right, number one, they didn't do their own traffic count, correct?
No.
Okay. So that answers my next question, which was, well, what time of year did they do it? And
Didn't it, I have this report here, and it says they have traffic counts, collected 24-hour continuous traffic counts for more than 2 weeks, but it was in February of 2017.
okay, so there you are,
So in
February.
order to assess the impact of the car wash on the adjacent streets, SE, which I assume is Schneider Engineering, the applicants.
So that goes to my question.
Right.
So traffic counts in February
But, and it says.
in
because-
this town
exactly.
are a kind of almost useless endeavor. Because if assuming that the car wash is going to be open 12 months in the year, I'd like to know, what the traffic counts that they're using are all 12 months in the year.
Perhaps I misread the traffic study. I suppose the applicant's agents can speak to that, perhaps. I don't think Schneider Engineering is here. But I do know that the plan, the traffic study does say, well, it does not have a comparison between the build scenario versus the no-build scenario,
Right.
which is what is the existing traffic now without the facility versus what is the existing what would be the existing or the new traffic with the facility, as well as the existing traffic from adjacent uses, being the landfill, the regular through traffic on Springs Fireplace, which is the basic of a traffic study and what we need.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah, no
throw you
problem.
off track.
That's fine. So I guess just jumping back, that is really important because this may be a type 1 action under Chapter 128 of the Town Code. If you decrease the level of service on an adjacent roadway, it automatically becomes a type 1. We have sent out the referrals to the involved agencies as if this is unlisted, but pending the additional information, it may become a type 1 action. So basically, you've requested a lot of information that still has not been submitted. What you got in this most recent submission was not a new site plan as requested. You got a revised traffic study that does have some additional information, but not everything that we would require. You also got a report from Z-Wash Distribution about the operation of the car wash, which does not include wastewater calculations, the chemicals to be used, which the board has asked for repeatedly. So basically, the application is still incomplete. And if the board still finds that it's important to get that additional information to analyze the proposal, and it's not provided, the board may wish to consider the other alternative, which is making a positive declaration under SECRA, at which time the applicants would be required to supply this information as part of an environmental impact statement. But as far as how you proceed with the application, you may also want to discuss that with council.
Right. So right now, just so that I have it clear in my head, what are they missing?
I'm sorry?
What are they missing? What don't they have?
They have not supplied water usage, in the quantity of water used, the chemicals that are used in the car wash itself, the process that the car wash uses. They have not amended the site plan to move the parking and provide a buffer that was requested by the board, a buffer of evergreen screening. They have not submitted a complete traffic study, in my opinion. It doesn't compare them not building the facility and the traffic in and out of the landfill and on Springs Fireplace Road versus if they do build the project. There may be some other things, but those are the main issues.
That sounds like
there.
4 or 5 right off the top. And these are things that have all been requested previously.
Yes, correct.
Okay. The applicant.
Good evening once again, Chairman Kramer, members of the board. I'm Britton Bistrian. I'm also joined by Tiffany Scarlato this time. We represent 238 Springs Fireplace Road LLC, of which Greg Darvin, managing member, is also here this evening, who's the principal. Similar to the previous application, to the new board members and the length of time since this project was submitted in 2015, I'll read our project narrative so that our intent is clear. The intent of this application is to seek approval for construction of an environmentally friendly car wash to serve the residents of East Hampton. The project is designed to have the least impactful ingress and egress from the site, not utilizing Springs Fireplace Road as the main point of access. We're not asking for a curb cut, we're entitled to one. In addition, the car wash tunnel is set to the rear of the property, adjacent to the East Hampton Town dump, to minimize sound and visual impact on the street. The green technologies used at the site will include energy-efficient lighting and machinery, recycling of gray water, net zero groundwater discharge, segregation and containment of all waste and treatment off-site. In any environment, but particularly in ecologically sensitive areas such as East Hampton Town, a car wash major is by far the most environmentally responsible way to handle the necessary washing and cleaning of a vehicle. The average at-home car wash can use in excess of 150 gallons of water, while an automatic car wash system uses 35 gallons or less. Ours actually only uses 11 gallons per car wash that's not reused. Whereas our system will use approximately 11 gallons, an automatic car wash can also greatly decrease environmental impact of keeping our cars clean by not only controlling the wastewater, but guaranteeing the use of biodegradable and enzyme-based cleaners. That was in 2015, so that was submitted to the board. Currently, the town and the DEC have no plan in effect to dictate what cleansers are used for household cleaning of cars, and no way to control that waste and runoff that occurs. Oftentimes, this waste and runoff is a toxic mixture of salt, grease, tar, and other corrosives that are constantly being picked up through normal operation of a motor vehicle. I just think it's important to know what the intent of this is. This is the first parcel of land. First of all, there's a few points I want to harp on. This is a parcel of land being reviewed in the town of East Hampton, in the hamlet of East Hampton. I'm only clarifying that because I keep hearing Springs. It's East Hampton. It's CI zoned, commercial industrial, which is the highest, most intensive use category in our town zoning. The parcel is vacant. It's surrounded by town roads, and at the rear, the town dump. Everyone knows these as the ingress and egress to the dump, but they're actually roads. And our intent in using them for ingress and egress was to not have another curb cut off Springs Fireplace, to utilize the already established flow. Originally, we submitted, we felt that we responded to questions throughout this relating to traffic, wastewater, landscaping. I don't know how many applicants actually submitted second traffic study. We did it on the board's request originally, and then when there was additional questions, we responded to them. I think, honestly, I don't even know. I'd be happy to have Ms. Schneider Engineering come in. He did come to the original one. There are traffic counts taken in February, adjusted for summertime, no build, estimated 2019 volume. All these factors are in this second traffic study we submitted to the board. So I would request that we take a hard look at that.
What's the date on?
It was submitted in January of this year. The date is July 26, 2018. And that was in response to Schneider Engineering appearing at a planning board meeting after his original study, and this was the second one to address the additional questions. We also did say that we submitted the statement that the wastewater discharge from the car wash would be zero discharge under Article 12 of the county code. The definition of zero discharge has come up in question a few times. We submitted the county standards to what that means. We submitted a narrative on how this zero discharge system operates. In this packet this is the proprietary information that wasn't available to us originally, that we actually hired and paid for someone to give us. So we have submitted that to the board. There's charts on water usage, containment tanks, how things are separated, a narrative on the same operation.
So just interrupt. So there's no, you're not claiming proprietary, I'm gonna use the word privilege. You're not claiming a proprietary privilege on that, on that?
So my understanding is that until you contract with a car wash company, they don't give you the way that they operate because they don't want you to take it and shop it out to somebody else. Because the board asked us to get that information, we had to hire a car wash company to provide the information that's contained within this.
And has that been turned over, is that part of the application now?
Yes, it was submitted in January.
Do we have that?
It was in the file, yeah, that's what's written, yes, I reviewed it, I mean, yes.
You as committee received it.
Correct.
The rest of us did not,
Well,
okay.
It's in the file.
it's in the file.
It was in the file, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Regarding the site plan being deficient, it didn't get resubmitted because there wasn't anything that we saw to be deficient. I might step aside and have Tiffany address the scenic easement because she's had a lot of discussions with John about when the scenic easement gets established. Can the board actually ask to landscape something that's supposed to be left in its natural state? There's a lot of issues. If the board wants to suggest, I didn't submit a landscaping plan, that is correct. But I don't know where to put landscaping when everything is either asphalt, concrete, a building, or a scenic easement. 26% of the property is in a scenic easement. So that's the reason that that's the one deficiency that I think you do have, because I chose not to submit it because I don't know where to put it. So in conclusion, I just would request that maybe the board and take a harder look at what we have submitted. Again, this is over 4 years. I don't want to start resubmitting things, but I think you have a lot of the information that was brought up as a question.
Tiffany,
Part of Main Street been abandoned already? It's listed, shown there as being abandoned. Is it been done?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't believe that is, I don't believe that this is the latest.
No?
Are you trying to get the date on that?
I was just trying to look at what the
Yeah.
date of the map was.
Maybe.
Can I?
Britton, the traffic study does show that there's not a change in the level of service.
Correct. That's the findings in the end. And that's consistent with the first traffic study as well that's in your file.
I'm just, I gotta tell you, I'm always very leery about traffic studies that don't account, particularly in this town, that don't account for the change of the year and that rely on,
Well, they,
you know, statistical interpolation. It's just that it seems to me that, you know, you're talking about, for one thing, one of the very busiest streets in the town. I mean, I know the entrance and exits on Maryland and Ohio, but the reality is that nobody's going to get to Maryland and Ohio without going on Springs Fireplace Road in the first place. And, you know, to rely on interpolations from February on a road that busy just seems like
well, they also
begging unreality.
They also use Suffolk County DPW traffic count volume from July and said that would be the higher
Where
of
is
the
that?
two. Page 2.
It's in the beginning. I think I have it highlighted.
And if it's questions about the traffic study, like we did the first time we submitted a traffic study and there was questions that came back, we revised them. If there's specific questions, I'm not a traffic engineer. If you want us to have him, you know, come in, we could probably arrange that as well. But I don't know how many applications, you know, this is a reputable company we've submitted to.
Yeah, no, I'm not, I'm just reflecting, you know, yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I'm reading it. Just always, you know, I'm always a little leery when I hear interpolations and rather than hard counts, but. All right, we can talk about it when we talk about it. I think Tiffany's standing there, chomping at the bit.
I just wanted to address the landscaping issue quickly. I don't know if the board is aware, I think we talked about this in a prior meeting, but the property is in an urban renewal map, so there currently is no scenic easement filed with respect to the property. And the way the urban renewal code works, is that the scenic easement isn't filed until you're filing for a certificate of occupancy. So you've already built your structure, and then you file your scenic easement. So we had asked the previous board if they would, because there is no scenic easement here right now, whether the board would want us to do some kind of landscaping plan or planting plan in the scenic easement itself before the easement is filed, which the applicant is not opposed to doing. It's just that we're not going to, bring the line further back. As Britton had said earlier, this 26% of the property is going to be covered in a scenic easement, so we're not actually, it would really be unfair to continue to take more and more of the property as time goes on. There was also an issue that was raised, and it'll probably come up again, so I might as well deal with it, about a setback from the easement. There's a code-required setback from the easement. However, the easement isn't going to be there until the certificate of occupancy is issued, so everything's going to be built prior to the easement being put in place. So from a legal standpoint, that all of these structures are going to pre-exist the enactment and the filing of the easement.
Tiffany, is that the urban renewal map recommendation? at
Yes.
50 foot?
Yes, that's it.
So do you see it as sort of a mandatory based on the urban renewal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did entertain some discussions early on about whether the planning board would make a recommendation to the town board to eliminate the scenic easement so that we could do some kind of planting. But we didn't really get that far with it at that point. But that's just the explanation as to why the scenic easement's there, why there is no landscaping plan proposed right now. There's already quite a large buffer in the front of the property.
Thanks very much. Okay, and,
It's me.
yeah, well,
It's me, the pirate.
take it.
Well, thank you for your overview again. I'm missing one of my things, but anyway.
Was it this?
No.
This.
Yeah, that's it.
There you are.
And I know that, I want to thank you for, first of all, this is, I get this application. It's I get the idea of it. We've just struggled a little bit with this catch-22 issue with the scenic easement, which, John, I would like to know from you whether, what, do we not take that into account because it hasn't been put in place? I mean, it seems like, in my understanding of the interest of good planning, if we know what's going to happen, we should be
Right,
planning.
I think you have that discretion
Yeah.
on your part. I mean, it doesn't exist yet. and
Right.
It does not require it to be submitted
Right.
until in between building
Right.
permit and CO being issued.
Right,
But, you certainly have to decide what you think
Right.
is an appropriate plan.
right.
In the UR map.
It is in the UR map,
Right.
which is interesting because very often commercial industrial properties marked on the map is to be excluded from the UR study. I guess that's not the case on this map.
Yeah, we talked about that,
Right.
there was some concept that this was done in error, right? Tiffany, wasn't that
Right,
your-
we did
yeah,
it, and
yeah.
that's what Greg was just saying, but we did believe that this was kind of an error, that they had left actually the scenic easement on there, because all of the other maps do not have the scenic
Right.
easement requirement
Right.
across the front,
Right.
which
Have
is
you
why
had
we
any-
had that discussion.
Any discussion with the town engineer at all about that yet? Or-
No, we didn't get very far with it with the board, so I didn't want to go down that road if the board wasn't going to be supportive of us removing the scenic easement from the property altogether.
Well, I think, I don't know if what he has in the way of old maps and the original study, but it might be interesting to see if that in fact was intentional or was an error. I don't know.
Right, I can ask him, we did have discussions because we did do the abandonment of Manhattan and Maryland, of
Right.
Manhattan. So I can have that discussion with him and
I
see if
mean,
he's
that
got
would
any
be
records on it.
helpful. It's not, it wouldn't be this is the town board, just
Right.
for the public, for
Yeah,
the
the
benefit of the public. It's
right.
not this board that would be making that determination, it'd be the town board.
But they would look to the engineer for that information. I mean, if
Absolutely.
he
I'm
indicated
just,
that was the case,
using the
right.
word board interchangeably. I just want to make sure everybody's following which board is which.
Oh, okay,
so,
sorry.
But just getting back to the setback issue, we have to resolve that somehow. And to my mind, there has to be some kind of buffer between, whether it remains as a scenic easement or there's some way to plant it, or this feels like a town board decision to me on that, but I think that we need to do something there. various things that, I know that you have done this analysis of the water recycling and consulting information, and I read this, but it didn't feel, I'm not an expert in this stuff, but I didn't feel that I really understood, what's there now? What was being used, what was actually being used in this. And I know that this board is very concerned about that. Now, I get the whole idea of the zero emissions, not emissions, it's zero discharge. But because of the groundwater issues, I don't know, it feels like this weird catch-22 where we can't know, you all can't get the proprietary information until you make a commitment. You can't make a commitment until we pass on it, and we feel like we can't pass on it until we know what the chemicals are. So I'm not sure where to go from here. I frankly, I think this, I'm not opposed to this. I think it's a car wash. It's in a commercial industrial piece of property. I just think what we feel we need, you can't get, and we can't get, and I feel stymied by that. I feel stymied by that. The other part of this is that I've said the same thing before, and even though the traffic study, you've done this traffic study, I think that Eric has a point that not knowing what the, no-build scenario is after this, that the extrapolations that were taken, I have done a little bit of transportation work, and traffic counts in February and then extrapolating it for later in the year, I just don't think is a comfort to the people that need to be reassured, including us, that the Springs Fireplace corridor isn't going to be really overworked by this. If you're successful, which I would imagine you would be, and I would hope you would be, it seems like 80 cars an hour can be used, can be washed, and that's a lot of traffic. So I don't know. I maybe I just don't. Eric did his analysis, and I have to lean on him for this because he does it more than I do. But somehow it just feels like 78 trips on a Saturday peak, and I haul my own trash, so I go on those roads all the time. It just seems like there's going to be a lot of cars there, especially in the summer when people are doing that. When you wash your car more in summer anyway. I still feel like I don't know enough to say, and I regret that, but that's just how I feel.
Yeah, I get this project. From the very beginning, I've sort of said I would rather have people washing their cars at a facility like this than doing it at home, I just would. And I think, and when you think about it, where else is a facility like this going to go in town? But having said that, the two things are groundwater and traffic. It's really as simple as that. Like Kathy said, we don't know. There is this catch-22. You can't kind of commit. You can't get until you commit to the vendor, he's not going to give you the detail. But, as you know, a lot of people in town have a lot of very strong feeling about the impact on groundwater here. And without the detail of how this could impact it, I'm not sure where we can go. It really is a very serious problem. And we've had lots of other applications that have impacts on traffic on Springs Fireplace Road. We have proposed to the town board that we do a comprehensive traffic study. We do need to do that. This can't wait for that probably, but you could help us by doing something more comprehensive because it is going to be an issue. Cars backing up to get in the summer is going to be an issue, I think. I'd like to see this be successful, but I think those two things are really big stumbling blocks. We have to think creatively about how to get over them. I look forward to your guidance on that.
Yeah, I'm new to this, and I defer to Eric and Kathy. But I just want to say that those two things that Ed just mentioned, the contamination of groundwater and the traffic, are important to me in that order. So it just seems to me that right now this is incomplete, and I'm not ready to make a decision on it.
Can I just interject for a second before we get to? This is the proprietary information. That whole thing about not submitting it, we did submit it. And this is a specific car wash company that gave us the information in narrative of how the car wash works, what chemicals are used, the site plan of how the cars drive through it,
When did you get that to us?
all the containment.
It's dated January 29th. Well, let me
Was
just
that-
read
is that the-
from
what
this.
was in the
Yeah, that's
file?
the thing I just, yes, that's.
And all the water usage,
that's the
plus
second
the zero discharge requirements of the Suffolk County Code and the New York State DEC Code says that nothing goes into the ground. So this question that we have some groundwater issue is really hard for me to wrap my head around when we've said there's nothing going in the ground.
That seems
What, am I missing
Kathy.
something?
Let me just read from this, because, you know, it may be that I just don't get this.
Okay.
I recognize
And
that.
it's a car wash, I mean,
I know, we're, you know.
I'd like to say something about this as well. I was just waiting for the board member to finish.
Okay.
Why don't you
Let me just read from here, because it says, you know, building is 80 feet long, capable of cleaning an average of 80 cars per hour. This is a volume of car wash operators would dream of even having with a longer tunnel. With my 45 years as a car, this is a fellow who did the environmental assessment here. I've only experienced this type of volume, unless, oh, that's not pertinent. Reclamation using filtration. So Bright is still the best in the industry, especially for zero discharge, in my opinion. I don't know what that means. Is this a So Bright, you know, the bio machines do have a place in our industry, but I have concerns for what I've heard about them. For one, volume of water demanded by the wash equipment doesn't allow the additives required in the process of the system to do their job. I don't know what those additives are.
But
the bugs they add into the system will eat the organics, but it's time consuming, and without tanks large enough to allow them to do their job, I don't think it's a good option.
Didn't you say the DEC and the health department review and approve the, I really don't think I really think they're the agencies that need to look at this.
Yeah.
Much more than us. We can't become experts in.
That document feels very different from what we were just shown.
I agree with what you're saying, Randy, but this is what was submitted, so this is what I evaluated. You know,
That sounds like
as
a
committee.
consultant was describing
And I know that
alternatives,
glycol and
not
other
a
compounds that are
specific.
sometimes used in the manufacturing of car wash chemicals. I'm not quite done. If people would just let me finish, please. Really hate to be interrupted. I know that glycol and other compounds that are sometimes used in the manufacturing of car wash chemicals will be a detriment to the system. Blah, blah, blah. The speed use permit. The DEC has tightened the demand of water being discharged into the ground. Anyway, I don't know. The calcium chloride, I don't even know what that is. You know, they're talking about that has, there's a chemical exchange, membranes, yada, yada. So
You have
I would.
two agencies reviewing this.
Right.
And there's no discharge into the
Right.
ground.
Okay.
I don't see.
If there's no, that's fine, but I just read this and it didn't feel like no discharge into the ground.
Well,
And
is
when I
that-
see all
that's
these
zero.
chemicals,
What-
I don't know what that means.
What happens with the 11 gallons per car?
Yeah, where does that go?
Yeah.
Goes back into the system or evaporates.
Well,
It goes into a containment, it's a hold and haul.
I'm sorry?
It's a hold and haul
Supposed to- yeah,
system.
it's supposed to
That's
drain
how
out
it gets zero discharge, is that
Right.
the 11 gallons that is
Right.
wasted in one car
Right.
is held and hauled.
In a tank
And some of that is some of that's evaporated as well.
Right.
So it gets taken off-site.
Calcium chloride is salt,
It gets,
it's not some icky chemical.
It's what they spread in the roads.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I
salt.
know, but I'm,
Is it hauled to
and
Bergen
what about
Point or something?
glycol and,
I'm sorry?
whatever
Does it
that
get
other
hauled
stuff
to Bergen Point or, some treatment facility?
Some treatment facility. I don't, the details of where it gets hauled.
Okay.
But this
So
Speedy's,
putting-
DEC
so
regulates
putting a-
when it's picked up, how much volume's picked up,
Right.
what kind of truck picks it up, how far it's taken, what it's done once it's there. There's manifest, there's paperwork, it's gotta be trackable from our site to its final treatment.
DEC and Health Department.
so,
Correct.
so that aside, you know, let's let Eric say what he wants.
Well, let Ian continue and then.
No, I'm not even up yet.
Well, no, I was going around the table.
Oh,
And
Eric,
then
before.
somehow we got,
Let's hear what.
went off track.
Not sure where to begin. But yeah, I mean, Ed, I think, pointed it out, and Kathy as well, that the letter that you received is a page-and-a-half letter from a consulting engineer recommending the SoBright system. Additionally included in there is an estimation of water usage. You'll see on the second to last page, there's a graph. It says average cars per month, I don't know. And so there's just a guess of 2,500. I don't see anywhere in this document where it refers to specific chemicals that are being used. As far as the 11 gallons, that is, I believe, the third paragraph from the end on the letter. What they're saying is that 11 gallons will be lost to evaporation, or, makes sense, if you've ever been to a car wash, there's still water on the car. As you drive out of it, it falls off the car. That's what they're saying, is that everything else will be recycled within the system, but every time you do a car wash, you're going to lose about 11 gallons of water, and that's going to have to be fresh water.
But what about this tank, the whole, there's a tank that's.
The tank holds the other, whatever it was. The 11 gallons is about 16%. The other 84% is recycled. It's held in the tank, it's recycled, and then eventually, it can't be recycled and it gets hauled out eventually, yes.
Well, they use,
So the point being that, besides, and I had talked to Tom Talmadge about this, I don't know, I wouldn't assume it's a significant amount, but some of the water is going to spill into the parking lot and go into the dry wells. But most of it will be lost through evaporation because it's hot water. It's not about groundwater contamination, it's about water usage. They can do 80 cars per hour. Theoretically, you're talking 800 gallons per hour of water usage for the use as a hypothetical maximum. But that's an aside. The main thing that we said about this was, again, I don't see anywhere in here, and maybe I missed it, that lists the chemicals that are to be used. There's a schematic of a SoBright system. There's a rough estimate of water that would be used. There's contact information for the professional, and there's the main body of it is just the recommendation that they use the SoBright system. I don't see a list of chemicals. I don't see a quantity of water usage that's anticipated. That was requested, and I suppose I'll let you discuss that. I also have comments about the traffic study, but I'll let you.
Thank you.
Well, do you want to say the traffic study, it's just so I don't make a fool of myself? Any more than I have already? It's been a few hours.
So, I believe it was said that they indicated the level of service under the no-build condition. If you look at the second paragraph on page 6, it says the results demonstrate that even using the worst-case elements, the intersections will operate well in the proposed condition, meaning they built it. The additional 39 vehicles associated with the proposed car wash will not have any significant impact on future traffic conditions. Given these results, an analysis of the no-build conditions is considered unnecessary. And I don't find that in this document. Maybe I missed it, but if it's in there, I'd like to know exactly what.
I read that too, and it did say they find it unnecessary because they say that even
they're basically
with
saying
the
it's
build,
not
it's
a
fine.
significant amount of
Right.
additional traffic, therefore we don't need it, which they may be correct. However, the town code has a provision that says that if you decrease the level of service on an adjacent roadway or intersection, that you become a type 1. We need to demonstrate that this is not a type 1 action.
But we do have the discretion as to whether to require a traffic study at all, and we don't always do it.
Correct.
And so, if we have enough information and we trust their traffic study, which I don't know if we do, I'm not saying we do, and they say, with the build, there's not a problem, what would we gain out of, you know what I mean? The
Well, you would
no-build.
determine whether or not it's a type 1 action under the law.
Of course, but if we, then any,
I understand what you're saying.
yeah, I mean, it just seems like, I mean, again, if we trust their numbers, then I don't know why we'd require that, because the service is not going to impact it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the board's discretion, but I'm trying to.
Is that reasonable? Is that a reasonable position for the board? I mean, if the board takes it, I'm not saying that we will.
I mean, I guess that's for you to decide as a
Right.
board member.
Can I
But
ask them a question?
I'm trying to answer a question of law of what type of action is this.
But I just wonder, because there are other projects that have traffic. We don't always make And at what level is like one more car gonna change the level of service? Is that a thing? Or like one car? Because that seems like it's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is generating traffic. This is drawing 80 cars an hour.
No, I know, and what they're saying
I
is
mean,
those
the
80 cars.
But the study discusses levels of service and what it means. You know, there's a level of service A is, you know, a delay of less than 10 seconds per vehicle, and that's, and then level service of B is between 10, excuse me, 10 and 15 seconds. And then C is less than 15 and greater than 25, and so forth. So an extreme delay, which is level of service F, you know, which we could say Main Street is, all summer long, right, is a greater than 50-second per vehicle
Right.
delay.
Delay
So
of
that's
what?
like, well, I'm
Delay.
waiting
Let me-
for a turning movement.
Let me, I
to
guess,
turn.
put it this way. If somebody waiting to make a left-hand turn out of the landfill right now has to wait, let's say, 10 seconds on average to make that turn. If the traffic study shows that if they build it, they're going to have to wait 11 seconds, it's not a big deal. But you would want to have that information to determine that it's not going to be now 30 seconds.
Except for, by the way, that you said our code reads, that would be a change in level of service. So 1 second would make it a type 1 action that would require an EAF?
No, if it does not decrease the level of service. But what I'm saying is you don't know that it doesn't until you find out a comparison between the existing conditions versus the proposed.
But levels of service are segmented by a second.
No. Here, they're right
Not
here.
really.
They're right here. They say it depends. It's like
10
5
seconds,
seconds,
10
10
to 15,
seconds. It grows
15 to 25.
from
yeah,
A to F
Well, I know,
is
but
40
10,
seconds.
less than 10, then 10 to 15.
Mm-hmm.
It's, there's a line that distinguishes the two. What you're saying the code says is that if you go from level service A, which is less than 10 seconds, to level service B, which is more, that decreases the level of service.
I get what you're getting at, and like,
We would-
let's
that would
say,
be type
the
one action?
borderline between A and B is 15 seconds, and they went from 14.8 to 15.2, and then therefore they decreased the level of service. It would make it a type 1 action, but you could use your discretion to say, well, it's not really that big of a deal.
Okay.
When we reviewed the Golden Car Wash, the turn off of Eastgate Road, making a left-hand turn onto Montauk Highway, went from like an already atrocious,
Yeah, it was already at F.
3 minutes
Yeah,
to
it
like
was already at
15
F.
minutes
Yeah.
to make a turn, and it was
No, we
ridiculous,
couldn't
and that
even-
was part of the reason that got paused X.
Right.
I don't know or think that that will be the case here, but we need to at least know what the difference is between the existing conditions versus what they're proposing.
Right. No, and Eric, I apologize. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Yeah,
We
no,
talked about this earlier, and I'm
fine,
not trying to
yeah.
spring new questions. I appreciate your expertise and knowledge on it. So.
the thing is, it strikes me it's important because it springs Fireplace Road. That's the
Well,
thing.
I know, but if they say that the level of service with the build is not problematic, and that requires us to trust their numbers, so let's assume for a second we do, then I don't know why we would need to say that, like, it's less of a problem if they don't build it. That seems silly. It also, oh, go ahead.
Well,
Let's stand the traffic
It all-
study, though, right?
yeah, but it's if that's an exercise in logic. I mean, you know, yes, that's right. But I think an argument can be made that taking counts in February and then extrapolating.
It's a
that
different
for-
question, different
but,
question.
But it's relevant.
But it's different, it's different than what.
Not irrelevant to you. Yeah, but it's not irrelevant because you're basing your, I agree with you. I would, you know, if it increased the level of service from 10 seconds to, even to 15.2 seconds, which on this graph would bump it to C, I wouldn't consider it C. I wouldn't reduce it an entire class of level of service because I have that discretion to do so.
I don't think we do. I think those are
No, but he's
hard
saying we
numbers.
can do that. He's saying, that's what Eric just got finished saying, we can do. We can use our discretion to say, that's not reasonable. To increase it by 0.1 second is something we can exercise our discretion on. I think part of what I'm having some trouble with is, the traffic counts were for 2 weeks, 24 hours a day, which was great, but for 2 weeks in February. And then the rationale was because the counts were taken in February, they're compared to the most recent Suffolk County Department of Public Works counts, which, is not all that impressive to me. For County Road 41 between 3 Mile Harbor Road, south of the site, and Abrams Path to the north. And July 2015 proved to be the higher of the two after an adjustment for growth of 2.2%, which in our community is low. Our community grows at 20% a year. I mean, I don't know what it is, but it's not 2%. I think this engineer's extrapolations, it's an undercount. I feel that it's an undercount. And that's really where the problem is.
I understand, but.
And I think that's what Eric is saying. You don't know what are those to begin with.
That's because they
You
didn't,
know.
I'm sorry, I didn't
Yeah,
interrupt.
no,
But that's
I
because
get
they
it.
didn't count in
I
the summer.
understand, yeah.
It's a very specific thing. The levels of service are hard numbers. A very specific thing to say. Our code requires us to call, this is type 1 action, if there's a level of service downgrade. That could be 0.1 seconds. All I'm saying is I think that's bad code. If we can use our discretion, then great. If we can use our discretion, then I would say we use it now. And again, whether the number, this is separate from whether those numbers are accurate. But in terms of requiring the no build scenario, it doesn't seem to make sense if we look at the build scenario and there's no problem, if in fact we have the discretion to use discretion. I mean, right, does that make sense? Now, other than that, I think that I don't think we can require somebody to do a traffic study in the summer. That would mean, or in a particular month. So we do have to trust there's some sort of,
Why not?
well, I don't think that we should be in a scenario where you can require somebody to wait 9 or 10 months to proceed.
I think that's fair, but one of the difficulties that this board is facing is there is so much development on that corridor.
I know.
And we're very dependent on these individual traffic studies to guide us in this. And as I've stated about 16 times, it's not such a great spot to be in. And people, I get it. So I don't know how to go forward with this. I really don't.
No, it's tricky, and obviously, I think if you do the traffic, oh, go ahead, Joanne.
No, I just want to say, it's standard practice in traffic studies to have the project look at other development that's going to go on in the area.
Yeah, that's missing. What about the bus depot?
It's right next door.
That's the one we did a couple
And
of weeks
likewise, the bus
ago.
depot's traffic study didn't look at
Yeah.
the other
they're all-
projects.
yeah,
I just
they're
read
all
both
in
of them today.
isolation.
Well, all of which goes to show that the prior request of this board for a comprehensive traffic study along Springs Fireplace in this general area.
I don't disagree. I'm
No,
trying to
I know.
move forward with what we can. And so if you do the traffic count in February, of course, there has to be some attempt scientifically to determine what that would mean in the summertime. And I think I think that they did that. Whether it's adequate, I'm not sure, and I would lean on Eric here a lot. But I don't think that based on I don't think we need to show the no build. Because I think we have to determine whether these numbers are accurate. And if the numbers are accurate, and they say there's no problem with the build scenario, I don't know what seeing a no build would help us determine if we're then just gonna use discretion to say there's not a problem anyway, which we would if we
That's
trust these
logical.
numbers.
That's very logical.
So I think we just have to hammer on whether these traffic counts have been adequately,
That's my point.
moved to accommodate for, or, account for what the traffic would be in the summertime. And I'm sorry that I don't have a firm answer. I did read the whole study today, talk with Eric about it, I care, but I just think we have to make sure that those numbers, so I don't have a specific request of you, and I'm not sure if the rest of the board does either, but I will say the no build wouldn't be required if we determine this to be accurate. The groundwater protection, I guess I have a question for John. I don't think, I'm not an expert on chemicals or car wash or septic or all these things that other agencies deal with. What can we ask for and what should we, I know you can't tell us what we should ask for.
Well, I mean, if you feel you need an expert, you certainly can retain an expert to.
But I don't want to have to,
Needed.
But why, don't.
I mean, the board has that authority. If there's an issue that you're not, you have questions about, feel you can handle,
but if
interpret
there's,
it yourself, we could have an expert.
but if they say that they have they're getting permits from 2 other agencies that.
You need a
will-
speedies permit, I would assume.
Right, will certify the
County
DEC
will.
and the health department,
Right.
that there's 0 water leaving this
I
system.
don't see how that's.
To me, I don't know how that works, but I'm just saying, if they have that approval and the guarantee from 2 other agencies, do we then jump in and say, I don't think it's appropriate for us to look at the inner workings of each, IA septic system, because I'm not gonna understand it. So, I think that often when they get approved by the health department, we sort of take that as, this is okay, it's been approved by the agency. Is it the same here, or,
Well, I don't know what the health department deems zero discharge to mean either. So whether that means a discharge of a certain amount of it is okay and it's still I don't know. I have no idea. Whether our engineer would know or not, or could find out. You know, we could certainly consult him if you want to start that way.
Well, I certainly share the concerns of everybody with the groundwater, and maybe we should talk to the town engineer or the natural resources. I don't want to put the applicant in a position where they have to give a bunch of different people different,
Right.
go through the same
Yeah, they
process
shouldn't have to.
with everybody
Natural
else,
Resources
especially because I
Department
know
might
that we are lacking
Right.
so I wonder, in zero discharge, if that is really the way it is, I think to Randy's point, it's pretty good. Water usage is still a problem, but I think that we can get those numbers if it's 11 gallons and 80 cars. And I really don't think there'd be 80 cars. They're estimating 39.
Probably not, but-
They're estimating 39 based on the traffic study at the peak. So still, that's a lot of water, but probably reasonable. So, the public hearing for this application is going to be, if it gets to that point, is going to be contentious. I don't have my mind made up in any way here. I just wanted to address the two major issues that everybody else is bringing up. Beyond that, I would say with the scenic easement, if you can plant in there, legally speaking, great, because I think it'd be great to have the scenic easement buffer and a planting that then blocks your, activity. And I think it's a win-win for everybody. So to the extent that that's legally possible, I would fully encourage it. Lastly, I think with traffic, one problem I have with the plan, and I said this early on, is that the exit goes out into the exit. I don't remember the name of that road, of the dump exit. And so if we're relying on the fact that someone's going to take their trash and get a car wash at the same time, I would hate to require people to go back out into the Springs fireplace because of one-way traffic. So I would suggest having an entrance also on the exit road of the dump, so that if you dump your, to take your trash and you want to get your car washed, as you're leaving the property, you can pull into the car wash and then pull back out onto the exit road, if that makes sense. Not that you're entering the exit road from Springs Fireplace, but if you're coming out of the dump, you can turn left in, because it would seem silly to go out into Springs Fireplace and do another loop.
That assumes there's enough room on site to do
It
that.
does.
Yeah, and you
But-
already have to do that, even if you're,
Maybe too tight of a turn, because
It's
you
a
have to
very tight
turn your
turn.
car
Well, to the
around
extent we're worried about traffic,
Yeah, no, I agree with
requiring
you.
everybody to go through twice seems like it's good to avoid. So
No.
I just think it's something to consider if it's possible.
Can I make a couple of points and then I'll sit down?
Actually, can we get let Randy and let Sharon give their points, and then we can wrap up with you and the applicant. So, Randy, you in?
As far as the groundwater, the explanation I've heard from the applicant satisfies me. I'd like to refer the proposal to the Natural Resources Department. I think that's a good idea. And see if they submit to them what we've gotten and ask them if they're
That is a good idea.
confident with the DEC and the County Health Department review. We know that sometimes the Health Department hasn't protected us adequately, but I'd be interested in hearing what Natural Resources said. Otherwise, it sounds to me pretty well covered. The traffic is what's really on my mind, and it's the cumulative traffic that we've got with the bus depot, car wash, under the bridge. I just don't see how Fireplace Road is gonna function. I did want to raise one other thing. In a previous meeting, we asked if the applicant was willing to consider an acquisition by the town. And I wondered if, and he said he was, and I wondered if you all have pursued that at all. Yeah, well, okay, well, is that still something you would consider? So it's price dependent,
Yeah.
but they, okay. No, I think the group that's pushing the traffic study and everything have There's been a lot of discussion about a public acquisition of this lot. Oh, there is? Okay, but you haven't gotten an offer yet.
If we're
Okay.
gonna,
All right.
if we're gonna, if this conversation is gonna continue, we really should have him
I
with the
understand.
microphone, so.
Okay.
Anything else?
So I don't know how to, I would like the traffic study to take a look, traffic engineer to take a look at the bus depot EAF, which also has a traffic study, and see if the combined flows change the level of service. Isn't the bus depot going to come out on Ohio? Or where, do you remember where the access for the bus depot site is?
I don't know. It's here.
Because
It's property to the immediate north, obviously, where the old scavenger waste
It's
plant
actually, yeah, kind of like this piece here.
So I think they may be proposing to use the same exit road that you are using, which could create at, you know, when the school buses are going out or coming in. I just don't think we can look at these.
I think it's a different curb cut.
Is it?
I think so, because you can't, they certainly can't enter there.
Okay.
I think it's farther to the north, but.
Well, see, I think.
Right on Springs Fire
Yeah,
Place?
Yeah, it's.
for the buses.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's where
We-
it's gonna be.
Okay, so, but I think we have to take into account the bus depot traffic and the car wash traffic.
It's
I
near
don't,
Ohio Avenue, it's right near there.
I think we need to.
that's it.
For what it's
Okay.
worth, the bus depot's traffic study, which I also read today, didn't take into account this one, so maybe you guys can get together and submit one.
I know.
Well,
We-
then
we'd have to require both of
we're
them,
edging
but-
up to exactly what we want, which is a comprehensive one. Okay, Randy, you're.
Yes, that's it.
Sharon, you're?
Yeah, I mean, I think almost everything has been said, that the DEC and the health department, we lean on them pretty heavily to make sure that, you know, groundwater is being protected. And if those two agencies have approved the system, I have be hard pressed to, you know, say something different. But, you know, traffic, having lived at the end of Springs Fireplace Road, you know, that road is just getting busier and busier as development happens. And it's a shame that we don't have this thing, but we don't have it. So I don't know how to read this study, and I feel deficient in my ability to really understand the traffic study, to be honest with you. The bus depot, I think in the morning, it's not going to affect the car wash at all. You know, the bus is going out in the morning, so we're just talking about the return of the buses in the afternoon. And I know that happens a couple of times. You know, having had a kid in school, there's the sport buses, and then there's the, you know, they do go back and forth. But I don't think the morning will be an issue with the schools. It'll just be the 3 o'clock, 2:30 entrance and exit. So
There may also be like a BOCES school in the depot.
right.
Yeah, I don't
And
know
it's
how-
But I
also-
can't imagine that's
And
gonna
it
be
also
very big.
changes, but that's another thing that changes seasonally,
Yeah,
you know, and which.
it goes away in the summer.
Actually, it
yeah,
would
well,
inure
it
to the
goes-
benefit of
It
the
goes
car
away in the
wash.
summer.
Yeah, that would
Just
be to the
get-
benefit
yeah.
of the car wash.
Yeah,
It's just
right.
that, you know, there's so many moving parts, quite literally, on this stretch, that it again cries out for a comprehensive.
I mean, I think under the bridge
traffic
is going to be
study.
more of a problem than the bus depot, but
Well, under the bridge is less predictable,
yes.
you know, I mean,
Right.
and is also year-round, well, not 100% year-round, but it'll be
It'll be year-round.
pretty
yeah.
year-round. Yeah, so, okay.
So,
So, all right, I guess, Eric, if you have any wrap-up comments, or we,
if the applicants want to speak.
okay, that's fine, yeah, I apologize.
I just want to point attention, there was a letter from Drew Bennett that also addressed the zero discharge and specifically the regulations on the county and the state. About the traffic study. So just so we're clear, we were asked by the board to commission a traffic study. We commissioned one. Questions came back from that traffic study. We commissioned a second one. We will make that expenditure if the board wants us to, but we really need, if we haven't addressed it the second time, the third time around, I really need very specific questions or the ability for our traffic consultant to speak with Eric so that these questions are answered. I can't extrapolate this just like, but I see, you know, future no build volume and future build volume. And I, saying that those numbers don't exist on this table, I think it does. So maybe we could be very specific on what it is that we have him address. And we're willing to do that a second time.
Appreciate that.
Wish we had done it the first time, but we will.
Is there, let me just ask you hypothetical, is there any way to reduce the volume of the car wash and still have it be viable? The number of like, is there some way to limit the number of cars?
I think we're looking at two things. 80 cars is the maximum capacity that the machine can process.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily say that we're going to have 80 cars. I don't know, would you have a gate? The whole purpose of, there's something that says the length of the tunnel versus the number of queuing area. There's ratios here, and we've honored those. I don't know if there's other.
All the queuing is on site, right?
Correct.
Yeah, but what happens if there's more cars than the on-site queue can handle? They go into the landfill entrance, right? They would start.
Maybe they come back later. I mean, when the car wash is
Yeah,
stacked
but
up,
they
do you
wouldn't,
pull
they
in?
wouldn't,
I
you see, the thing
don't.
is, they wouldn't know that until they went down Maryland Avenue.
Grocery shopping and I come back.
The code requires 10, Randy, the code requires
I mean,
10 queuing
really?
spaces, which they have.
Yeah.
And ironically, if we wanted to have them process less than 80 cars, that would mean slowing the car wash down, which would lead to a bigger queue, so.
Yeah.
I think the concern that I think it's Randy just raised is the idea that somebody comes off of off of Springs Fireplace, they go onto Maryland, they see that the queue is backed up all the way to Maryland, and then what do? If they're going to continue on to the recycling center, they might have to pay a fee to come back out and turn around. Would they have to do that?
They would, yeah.
So,
How many cars fit in the queue? That's a
10.
good question. Oh, 10?
I just heard 10.
Yeah, it meets the requirement.
Is there a bypass lane?
It's just it's the geography of
You
it.
just go straight
Can they
through.
go straight through
You
and
can go
come out
straight through
again?
and exit the other side.
Could you do that? Is that true?
Yes.
So there was
There's a
So you'll have a road,
There's
you'll
a
have
lane.
a road at the bottom, all right, then so
I
much
mean,
for
that
that.
really does take care of it, let's
That
face
does,
it.
that does.
Yeah,
No,
if
that's
there's too
good.
many cars, you don't go.
That's
you
it,
know?
yeah, no, you're exactly right, it's like we're going to the grocery store.
Well, why wouldn't you pull over on the side of Maryland and wait for the queue to move ahead?
Because there's a sign there that says no parking.
Because we're New Yorkers. We don't wait for anything.
All right, if there's no parking, I don't think there is now.
Well, there isn't now.
Yeah.
But I presume that something that we might consider as a recommendation
Yes,
is that there be no parking.
no standing.
No standing, no standing, not no.
Okay.
Yeah, no standing.
And regarding the specific items on the site plan, just like the traffic study, if I could know exactly what those deficiencies are, because there was something that car wash major wasn't calculated, it was on the site plan, and it may just be the site plan I submitted a year and a half ago didn't make it to your desk.
On those things, you'll work with.
I just need to know, I don't want the blanket letter that just, I would really like to know specifically what the issues with the traffic study are, specifically what the issues with the site plan. I don't want to just guess.
Well, the letter that you're gonna get from us is going to say satisfactory to the planning department. So I'll leave it to the planning department to
Previous
pick it
planning
apart.
board post-meeting memo outlined those items.
Did it?
Okay.
Happy to.
Let's just regenerate that and
Okay.
written.
And the landscape plan, if we can legally landscape the scenic easement and provide a screen just off the parking lot, we will. But
Great.
that would be the only reason I would submit a landscape plan, if we can
That'd be
legally
great.
plant in the scenic easement.
It's naturally vegetated there. Has
We don't-
anybody
To a degree.
taken
Well,
some pictures
Yeah,
of?
it's not a lush,
Yeah.
you know, forested area. There are some big trees that are closer to the road, but it's pretty scraggly.
Well, it's nice, but if you had evergreens right along your parking
Along the
area,
park,
it
that was
would
the
help.
idea, is to put it on the.
Not the
you know,
whole thing.
Behind the
closest To
easement.
the parking,
But behind the easement?
No, in the easement.
well,
Well, I don't know if they're gonna
not-
be inclined to want to.
right next to the easement. I mean, really mostly in front of the parking area, and then, but
Guess it
that is
doesn't
the
fit.
easement.
That's the easement, yeah, that's
the
the problem.
easement.
That's the easement.
Right, so it's in the easement, but it's not within, it's not in the middle of it. It's not 20 feet away from the property line.
Correct.
It's on the perimeter of the easement and the parking area,
I-
correct?
I'd
That was our proposal.
I would suggest that you have the applicant talk to Natural Resources about that concept, though. See if they think it's
Okay.
appropriate, if it's a kind of a impaired area, as far as vegetation goes, that can be essentially restored by some sort of a
By
plan, I
some
think
kind,
that might
yes.
be something you
Since
consider,
the board
otherwise
is
I'm not sure.
considering NRD for the zero discharge evaluation, couldn't they just add that to their
Yes, we should
referral
do that.
instead of me doing it?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
let's do that.
Yeah.
That's
That's
fine.
a good point.
That's fine. Okay.
Or, the other alternatives are to go to the town board and see if they would reduce the easement or something
Yeah.
along those lines to allow for a vegetative buffer.
Right. That was, I thought, what we
Right.
really left it, really, was the last time.
That would be
The decision the board would have to do.
Yeah, it's within your UR
Right,
map, so
right.
the board could, in theory, modify. Tom Talmadge, myself, and the applicant's agents, I believe, do agree that that is actually probably an error on the UR map that requires that 50-foot scenic easement. There's no other UR map within town that has a commercially zoned property that requires an easement. There's always a notation that says that, CI or commercial lots are outside of the UR map. And we look back through the changes and when this was made, it does seem like it was an error, so I think that the board might be amenable to changing it.
The town board.
Yeah, the town. But they would need a UR map modification to get that.
So how about if we propose that it be
Recommend it.
modified to a 40-foot easement with a 10-foot area that's outside, that's specific.
And then it would meet the setback criteria, and it could be landscape. I kind of thought we did that already, though, didn't we talk about a 40-foot?
easement is taken, or write the easement to allow for some buffer.
Planting in
Right.
it. Yeah, that's true.
The board had discussed that, and I believe it was the majority consensus of the board that they were okay with that.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
10-foot buffer of whether it be within the 50-foot easement, as Joanne says.
Right, or modified to 40 feet, right.
Explore that.
Can I say one mercifully quick thing?
Please.
Oh, yes.
Really quick.
Yes, I will.
Like, it's 10 PM, do you know where
Yeah,
we
I know,
are?
I know.
Quick.
So I'm just going to say it could be my mistake. In this report, the level of service under the no-build condition might be included. I don't see it. I've read plenty of these. I don't see it in these charts here. That's all build condition. And I just want to say on the record that I was in contact with Schneider Engineering via email multiple times. I can submit those emails to the record if that's needed. And I basically directed them. I scanned a PDF of the Golden Car Wash's traffic study, and I said, do this. And definitely included in that was a no-build analysis, and I don't see that in.
You'll make a reasoned determination, I think, with respect to the no-build. I'm hearing opinions going both ways on that. At least I think that's the way to do it. All right, so I think we've wrapped that matter. Do we have anything else?
Great,
Do we have questions? Oh, do we need
It
to
just
do
says
anything?
incomplete.
Incomplete, all right. Oh, actually, I should also add, we received a letter from Council for the Citizens to Preserve the East End. They asked for an adjournment, which obviously we didn't do, but this matter is incomplete, and it'll be brought up again, and I think that any fair reading of tonight's work session will make it clear that we definitely covered, I think, all the ground that might have otherwise been covered. At least I hope we did. So, now we will go on to the regular meeting, which will be mercifully short. Okay, the first matter we have is Great Trex Minor Subdivision.
In the matter of the application, Great Trex Minor Subdivision for resolution amending approval, I've read the resolution and move for adoption.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, we have an extension of time.
Yeah, no, I don't want to be the stick in the mud, but this thing's been going
Oh, how
on
old
since
is it?
2010. Since 2010, and it's, and I've got this request here, and all it said, there's no real explanation except they need an approval of Suffolk County Department of Health Services, but nothing, there's been nothing since.
Whose is this?
It's me.
No, I don't mean that. I mean in terms of over with you guys. Who has this?
Empire Site Plan.
Empire Site Plan?
It's old.
Any reason why this is hanging around as long as
Do
it
you
is?
know why? I mean, because it's 9 years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why it took them so long to do it.
They've paid the fee. I mean, this is another one of those things where people just come in.
Yeah,
and pay
you
the
know
fee and
what,
it's-
is there any, all right, is there any
Sort of.
issue if we don't do this tonight? Because I would like to know more. I think as a general rule, we're starting to get these 10-year-old applications. I think it's worthwhile to do a little bit of an inquiry.
I can basically tell you, if you remember, recently we had that Grinnell residence application, and it was a normal extension of time, but it was from 12 years ago, and I had to come in front of you and say, hey, listen, the law changed. They were approved for an old sanitary system.
Right, that's
Needed
exactly
a
why
new sanitary system.
concerns me.
I'm very familiar with this application. I worked on it. In fact, I've actually already done a site inspection. They're looking for a CO. They've done the work.
Okay.
They're not complete. They didn't put the parking spaces in correctly.
Oh.
But nothing has changed since when they got their building permit, commenced their work. I'm pretty confident you can grant the
Well,
extension.
that eases my mind. That would be
Is this the
helpful. There's nothing on
North
here.
Main
that
gas
says
North
that.
Main
That's
Street,
the
yeah.
thing. Yeah,
It's-
okay.
What it
Grinnell?
was, if
Oh,
you
this is the
remember,
gas
there were two
station.
old dilapidated buildings.
Yes.
Yes.
The property
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
consolidated
Yes,
into that new
yes,
concrete
okay.
building.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what
oh.
this is.
Empire
This is
site
Empire.
plan. Site plan tax number 300-168.
The convenience store?
28.1 for an extension of time for in 1 year increments within which to obtain a CO or until April 27, 2019. I read the resolution and move for its adoption.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Eric,
Finally, hold, guys.
Grinnell is going to come back to
Randy,
us?
Randy, can we just
Sorry.
do the minutes?
Okay.
Then we can
Okay.
have a final motion to adjourn.
Move to adopt the minutes of February 13th.
I second that.
All in favor of adopting the minutes?
Aye.
Okay, now, is there any other business before we take a motion to adjourn?
I just wondered if Grinnell is going to come back to us.
I don't know, that's up to them. I think effectively, because of the change in the law, they basically need to submit a new application.
Okay,
They
because
can't move forward.
I noticed that, I think it's Grinnell, that in the Hamlin studies, I believe Grinnell is proposed as an acquisition to widen the road out around Gosnell's.
Yes,
So I thought we
yeah, it's
should-
part of that block in the Montauk Harbor
Yeah,
area.
yes.
So maybe the town board should be aware that
Well, that's a good point.
before they develop it.
You don't want that.
They need a modification
fits
or
anyway.
a
It
new
might have
site
been
plan
mine.
would
I
probably
have
be.
a
Yeah.
billion
Motion to
other
adjourn?
papers today.
Is there a second on the motion to adjourn?
Second, third.
All those in
fourth, and
favor?
fifth.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.